Hey everyone, hope you're all doing great. Welcome back to the Anime Fictions 2.0. Today, we're diving into another exciting What If, Part 7 of Naruto Rise of Lord of the Foxes. If you're enjoying these alternate timelines, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and check out the other videos on the channel. And of course, drop your thoughts in the comments. I always love hearing your ideas. Alright, enough talk, let's get into the story. The news of the village hidden the sound being destroyed along with Orochimaru and his right-hand man Kabuto, who were both traitors to Konoha, shook all the elemental countries to their foundations. Even more so was the fact that a new hidden village was built right on top of Sound only after a few days of seeing the Shinigami's face on the moon that night. About a month into the new village's secret construction, two black coffins appeared out of nowhere covered in and leaking out blood one dark cloudy morning right in the village square of Konoha for all to see. Each coffin bore the symbol of the Shinigami on top of them, and the blood from each handcrafted death box didn't seem to stop, and next to the coffins were 5 tall black-robed druids, 2 per object, standing as still as statues with the leader out in front of them. The only thing giving away the fact that they weren't statues was they were all in chorus with one another. It was only after the several Nbu, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and the council arrived did the citizens of the Leaf start to calm down, knowing such a group could protect them. Near the crowd was the Rookie 8, having been renamed after Naruto had been reclassified as a SS-class missing ninja. Such an action shortly happened after the large crate filled with the remains of hunter ninjas had been delivered by the three-tailed demon fox to the council meeting room with Tsunade that eventful day. She had argued, threatened, and do everything in her power to force them to stop such a horrible decision, but in the end they had overruled her and done it anyway, shipping out the latest bingo books less than an hour after doing so. Now she was staring at 5 agents of death, though they were of a different sort than the ones she is used to, and the fact she couldn't see their faces beyond the thick-robed face coverings disturbed her. Were they friend? Foe? Something in the middle? It was always hard to tell with the people who hide their faces with masks. She mentally winced thinking of Naruto with his mask on and how it had hidden his pain for so long. Kami, she missed him. Reluctantly putting the thoughts of her little brother in the back of her mind once more, she approached with Jiraiya and several Nbu to the lead druid, who made no movement whatsoever other than to continue with the chorus. "You are the leader of this group?" said Tsunade, trying to vocally overpower the druid's singing before she decided to lose her temper. The leader of the group tilted his head to the side before setting it straight and nodding a barely noticeable nod while continuing his singing, not missing a beat with the others behind him. "If that is the case, then are you from the new hidden village that built over Sound?" said Jiraiya, looking at the druid carefully, trying to measure the druid's chakra signature only to find it was masked perfectly against even him. If possible, the chorus from the druids got even louder, thus making Tsunade's temper get shorter at both her and Jiraiya being ignored/disrespected. "Listen. If you don't tell me who you are and what is in those bleeding boxes behind you, I'm going to beat the crap out of you," said Tsunade, nearly yelling as the chanting had not stopped once, making everyone watching feel uneasy that 2 Sannin with a Kaiga were intimidating the uninvited guests. Hayashi himself had tried using his Byakugan on them only to shut it off before the veins on the side of his eyes even appeared as he shock froze him to the bone. What the clan head had seen in that very moment was not something he wanted to relive again, as he saw beyond the robes was absolutely nothing. No life. No chakra network. No churka, period. Only death locked away behind flimsy black robes. Slowly the lead druid raised his gloved hand, making the people around him hold their breaths, and the shinobi discreetly getting ready to attack should the druid try something. However, surprising nothing happened as the hand was raised to the right of his head, and the druids behind him slowly stopped their chorus in a smooth fashion. "If you want to know what lays in the coffins, all you have to do is open them," said the silent, whispery voice of the lead druid before turning to the side to let them pass. "For a guy who can sing loudly, he sure has a whispery voice," thought Jiraiya, wanting to sweat drop at, but decided against it due to the seriousness of the situation. "This better not be a trick," said Tsunade, walking over to the 2 black rectangle-shaped boxes supported by the unnaturally raised earth that represented death, and hesitated, now being closer to the blood that laid on and around the coffins. Jiraiya was instantly next to her, putting a hand on her shoulder, knowing of the woman's fear of blood, reminding the slug Sannin of her dead lover and brother. The Toad Sannin also suspected that his teammate feared that one of these coffins held a bleeding and dead Naruto holding the cursed necklace that belonged to the first Hokage. The Toad Sannin suspected it because he feared the same thing too. Now in front of one of the coffins that was on the right, the two druids opened the casket, revealing the remains of a cut, sliced, and ultimately dead Kabuto. The man had a look of pure horror in his eyes, as if his soul was now literally in hell and his eyes on his face were somehow connected to it. Scary thought, thought Tsunade and Jiraiya at the same time before heading to the next coffin in question, and when they opened it they saw the liquid remains along with bones of their former teammates/Sannin. Holy hell! Yelled Jiraiya, leaping back along with Tsunade, who like him was now scared at the sight of what they saw. Whatever happened to these two former sound ninja, they had suffered dearly for their past crimes, and had they had any empathy they would have pitied the two. Fortunately, since those past crimes involved the two Sannin, there was no pity to be had. Shikage-sama expects full payment for both Orochimaru of the Sannin along with the amount for his right-hand man Kabuto as well, said the lead druid, looking at the two remaining Sannin, who currently were pale as snow in the face at the moment, though it was more from seeing the two bodies than the fact that the overall payment would strain Konoha even more. The majority of the council, of course, would have none of that. Sorry, but you can only receive a bounty that belongs to Kabuto for both him and his master, said Danzo while silently fuming inside that his silent partner in crime to his plans went up in smoke. If I recall correctly from what I was told, when it comes to all hidden villages, if you have more than one bounty you get the amount for each confirmed kill you present to the village in question, said the lead druid looking at Danzo's direction, while the said man felt nervous under the druid's stare, or rather the unseen one. We make the rules here in Konoha, you lowly druid, and we say you only get the amount for Kabuto to cover him along with Orochimaru, said Kakashi, trying to determine just how much of a threat they were and who was their Shikage-sama. Was it? Very well then. If you will not meet the required demands, we will take them elsewhere and receive the necessary payment from another hidden village these two have wronged. I'm sure Suna will be more than willing to pay the necessary amount for these two due to the sand/sound invasion. In the meantime, I would expect you to receive a very angry letter from the Fire Daimyo after Shikage-sama informs him of your shrewd and highly dishonest policies, said the lead druid before he made a motion with his hand again to the others behind him as they proceeded to close the coffin and began to sing in chorus again. No, wait. We will pay the amount, said Tsunade quickly, knowing that whatever killed them was not human and needed to be investigated under her watchful medical eyes. Tsunade, have you lost your mind? We can't pay them that amount, it will cost the Leaf Village dearly, said Mitokado Hamura, not wanting to give anyone from outside the Leaf their precious money, especially when it was needed to help train Uchiha Sasuke for the Chunin exams and eventually when the boy became their 6th Hokage. Shut up, Hamura. I am Hokage here, and right now this is a military matter that falls right under my jurisdiction, not you or the other council members for that matter. These two will need to be examined by me to determine the cause of their death, and while I make a complete medical report I will have my assistant Shizen give you your money for the Shikage, said Tsunade, knowing that if the village officially refused it would be another smear on it, and her own grandfather's legacy when both he and her great-uncle founded Konoha. Tsunade-sama, we object to this, said Danzo, becoming infuriated at the woman. That's Hokage-sama to you, Danzo, and don't you forget it, said Tsunade, glaring at the one-eyed and one-armed former leader of Root. We will deliver the two coffins to the necessary rooms. Please do lead the way, Hokage-sama, said the lead druid, who, if Tsunade didn't know any better, had a hint of humor in his voice. Jiraiya thought the same thing too and made a mental note to have his spy network focus more attention to the new hidden village that now replaced sound. Of course, such thoughts were discontinued as the druids all began singing their chorus as they closed the coffins and followed the slug Sannin/Hokage to the hospital, ignoring the looks from the populace. Hidden Mist Village at the moment. So are you in? Said Rin, looking at Ikaku, who looked at them in shock at hearing the plan on taking over Mist and Water Country in order to heal the deep wounds that had been delivered to it via the Bloodline Civil War. Ikaku was in conflict with himself at the moment as he struggled between his loyalty to the Mist and to the man the people he just started working with. In all honesty, Ikaku wanted to stay with the Mist since he had been born, raised, and trained in its arts as a shinobi. However, the state that it was currently in, plus the information Rin and all the others had given him, questioned such loyalties to the Mizukage and Water Daimyo. The bald-headed man remembered when he was a boy and took up the sword as an apprentice to a former 7th swordsman of the Mist that it was for a cause he would always fight for, and he could believe in as long as what he believed in was noble. Right now Mist wasn't so noble anymore, and the fact that his sensei had just set up a new hidden village where sound used to be was another factor. From what Rin had told her of the ploy, Kenpachi had to stay in water country for a little while longer to make sure that Konoha would discover that Shinigami no Sato was founded by him. That was the main reason why Zangetsu would take up the position as temporary Shikage. Then when Rin and Yujito took over water country and Mist, Ikaku would be given the option to move back into the ranks of Mist if he so chooses to, or move into Shinigami to serve the official Shikage that would Kenpachi. My whole life I spent in this place, living my life struggling to survive until I became old enough to enter the ranks of the Mist and become the shinobi I am now. On every single mission I took I have fought hard, learned, and killed from my enemies to make myself stronger. Now I find that I cannot do that here because of how things are run, and my only shame in the matter is I chose to ignore the problems around me, hoping they would go away if I fought hard enough. I need to follow and support Kenpachi-sama wherever he goes and fight whoever he fights, because I know that he is not blinded by his new title and power like other people have become in his position. So to that end, no matter what happens, I pledge my undying loyalty, my very sword, and life to Kenpachi-sama, said Ikaku as he envisioned the path leading to his fate appear before him and how to walk the line as it grew before his eyes. Good to hear, Ikaku-san. Now we just have to find some of the remaining apprentices to the Seven Swordsmen, and everything will be perfect, said Yujito, knowing that by now the rumors of Shinigami no Sato was spreading like wildfire. That will be easier said than done. I know of another apprentice like me, but the thing is that he's a bit fruity in my opinion, but I think I can convince him when I see him. Then there is another, who was originally born in the slums of Mist and grew up there as a kid. He was found by one of the much older members of the Seven Swordsmen, and like me, the guy was heavily trained in the arts of the Mist shinobi. The only difference is that he was trained on the mainland of the elemental countries more than he was here. If I know him like I think I do, he's in a bar somewhere getting hammered deep in jungle country, said Ikaku, though in his mind why the place was named it despite the land being well populated with an equal amount of people as there was vegetation was beyond him. The land of jungle country was in itself, as its name said, it was a land of jungles with plants and animals of many different species looming around every corner. However, the real meaning behind the country's name was that it was an actual jungle in terms of both the civilization and that of the actual wilderness surrounding its people. The said people that founded the cities in the country built high steel walls around them to prevent the more predatorily bred beasts in the jungles outside of the walls from entering, though that happened on random occasions nonetheless. It also explained to the other countries why the guards that protected its people had such great health, medical, and life insurance plans all rolled up in one. Well then, at least we know where to look for them, said Uzumaki Kenpachi, walking into the room wearing similar dark crimson trench coat as Zangetsu did, but with his hair normal without having the bells in his hair and not super spiky to hold them. The eye patch and Ichiro's still clinging to one of his shoulders stayed the same. How is the hidden Shinigami village progressing? Said Yujito, wanting to know like the rest of them how everything is going in the new village. Pretty good. Zangetsu-sama is the temporary Shikage until our business here in Mist is officially over, and Kimimaro is working with the Shinigami Fort to help regulate all the necessary parts of the village. I was actually quite surprised at how they were able to get so many people to join up all at once, though I asked Kimimaro to run a background check on all of them thoroughly to ensure we don't have any spies from any unwanted villages. As much as I respected Old Man Sandane, he let too many spies infiltrate his village, and through that it cost Konoha much during the sand/sound invasion, said Kenpachi, sitting down on the comfy sofa with Ichiro jumping from her perch on his shoulder to his lap. Not like it matters, Kenchan. You're going to crush them all anyway for the bad things they did you when you were younger. Take no prisoners, said Ichiro, who laughed as if what she just said was a joke. For the most part, yeah. However, I'm going to have those who were good to me still be saved from my Shinigami ninja, said Kenpachi, knowing from what his spies hiding in the shadows of Konoha learned that there were still people in it that supported him. I still can't believe Zangetsu gave you demonic druids to work with. Aren't the people in the village afraid of them? Said Ikaku, looking at his superior officer and teacher, and wondered how he got himself into this. Oh yeah, now I remember. I got my ass kicked, thought Ikaku, while his inner Ikaku was crying tears of sorrow at being beaten by someone younger than him. That and being bald, but that's nothing new. Not really. The druids don't hurt anyone and rarely ever interact with the people in the village, if not at all, so the fear of such things happening are unfounded, said Kenpachi, stroking the fox ears of his daughter, who snuggled into his chest, purring in content with the feel of her fox-like ears being massaged. Ikaku, for the most part, when he learned about Yuichiro, took the news and the true form of the half-demon fox girl rather well. He had screamed like a little girl before fainting, but other than that he didn't belittle the girl or call her mean names like half-breed or demon spawn like many other untrustworthy people would in his place. Ikaku, for the most part, had no problem with Yuichiro being a half-demon and had stated that clearly to Kenpachi when he had awoken from his fainting. Granted, Kenpachi had his sword to less than in Ikaku's eye when asked, but it was the truth. I'm just glad that Orochimaru and Kabuto are gone. I have heard too many stories about those two for a lifetime, said Rin, remembering the Sannin when she was still a genin, and heard how Kabuto backstabbed the Leaf during the Chunin exams. From the amount given for the bounty on them both being dead, it will go a long way in funding Shinigami and no doubt attract the attention of several high-priced clients, said Ikaku after reading the latest information from Bingo Book. That and more, Ikaku, since Orochimaru and Kabuto were only the beginning of many, since it's quite clear by now to Akatsuki, if they haven't already figured it out, that they've lost 2 more members of the organization. They know that I'm not the chump they all thought I was, and for the first time since the hunt for all 9-tailed demons started, they have become afraid of me. They know I will go on the offensive soon, and when I decide to, I'm going to enjoy hearing them scream as they beg for mercy. It will be music to my ears right before I rip out their lungs along with their throat, said Kenpachi, releasing a teeth-showing grin like that of a fox as he laughed at the prospect. Unknown location. So it's been confirmed. Haiden and Kakuzu are both death, said Pain, getting a nod from the remaining members hearing the information and considerably shocked by the news. It's also been confirmed Orochimaru and Kabuto are dead as well. Those two were both killed apparently by the new Shikage, who founded his new hidden village right over the remains of Sound itself, said Itachi, not liking this one bit, though he was relieved that the Uchiha bloodline was now safe from the hands of Orochimaru and his foolish ambitions. At least he's out of the way, yeah? We can focus on more important things now with the Sannin dead, yeah, said Deidara, happy with the fact that the Sannin was dead since he had ample knowledge of what was going on in the organization. True, but this could hinder us later on. We tried sending a few spies in already, and every time they entered the village only for them to be killed shortly after interrogation, making them more aware of us. The person that tests them is said to be a human lie detector, who can tell if a person is lying just by looking into their eyes, said Sasori, not liking this one bit since there was no hidden village yet that could prevent them from spying on. Do we even know who the Shikage is? Said Conan, looking at all of them, hoping that at least one of them had done their jobs right. It's hard to get a description of him since our spies get caught, and any message they try to send could possibly be intercepted by another ninja from the village. From what we were able to get from the bits and pieces that got out before we lost contact with our spies, they said the Shikage always wears a thick dark robe with a hood so big you cannot see his face. Only the darkness that consumed it, said Itachi, who had his curiosity about this Shikage grow upon hearing more about it. How troublesome, said Toby, sighing, knowing this was going to be a pain in the ass, while the Uchiha Mandara and him planned for the future events that would soon unfold. Konoha 30 minutes later. The 5 druids that delivered the 2 coffins were walking and heading out of Konoha with the lead druid out in front, having been paid. The people around them moved children away, telling them to stay away from them while giving the robed figure glares. Some of the adults were silently muttering curses at them, calling them weirdos, freaks, and of course demon worshippers, on account that they appeared to be anything but human to associate with the darkness. Regardless if they were all walking in a bipedal state or not, the people living in the Leaf Village were still considered them unwelcome in Konoha. As for the druids themselves, they were soon intercepted in the space between the doors leading to their exit of the Leaf Village by ANBU root squads with a total number of 16 ninjas in full battle-ready gear. They were under the command of the council, and Danzo ordered them to retrieve the money back they were taking back to the Shikage. Druids of the Shikage, hand us the money given to you or you will be placed under arrest for stealing from Konoha, said the ANBU root captain while he and the rest of his men drew their weapons should there be a fight. You are making a big mistake, ANBU captain, for if you prolong our delay back to our Kage any longer, he will consider this an act of war. Something I doubt your Hokage will approve of your actions, said the lead druid once more, as still as a statue along with the others behind him. We are under orders to take back what you have stolen from the Hokage by her fellow council members, so we are going to assume that she wishes this as well, said the ANBU root captain, though it was obviously a lie on his part about the Hokage wishing for them to take back the money. We will not give back what was rightfully given to us by your Hokage, and if you try you will regret it, said the lead druid, sensing the growing crowd watching, wondering how this would play out in the end. Kill them and salvage anything useful from the corpses, said the ANBU route captain, readying his sword at the 5 druids, who stood perfectly still as if they had nothing to be afraid of. And they didn't. Just as the ANBU route team charged at the druids, a heavy round black object linked with a chain, creating a crater 5 feet wide and 4 feet deep, making the ninjas scatter. Honestly, now, did you really think Shikage-sama would send 5 druids without making sure they were all protected by the ninja that serve his village? Said a figure on top of a nearby roof, wearing all black except for a tan-colored trench coat, while wielding what appeared to be a very menacing sword, looking down on the ninja team as a larger figure next to him retracted the large ball into his hand. "What the hell? Who are you?" said one of the ANBU route members, wearing a wolf mask and readying himself for a fight. "Considering your level of skill as a ninja, you are unworthy to know any of our names except that you will address our squad leader with respect. As for who we are but one of many groups of the loyal ninja of the Shikage himself, and behind me are some of the best warriors at his command," said a warrior wearing mostly blue, with his arms bearing the colors of orange mixed with black in stripe form, and he was wearing a demon mask. "You better let those druids pass or there will be some hell to pay if you don't from us," said the smallest of the group with a needle-like nose, who was on top of the biggest and arguably the fattest member of the group. "It's not like we're asking you to kill yourselves, though if you want we'll gladly give you to opportunity by fighting us," said the long red curly-haired man, who threw the ball with chain at the root ninja only to throw the ball into the air slightly several times to dare the ANBU to try. "Captain, what do we do? We have our orders, but we have to protect all the villagers as well, or the council and the Hokage will have our heads," said an ANBU with a cat mask on. The said captain looked on between the group of fighters, the people, and the eerily quiet druids before coming to the all-knowing conclusion that while they outnumbered them, it would be hard to defeat an enemy whose skills were unknown. Especially when there is the possibility of innocent civilians being captured, harmed, or killed in the process. "Let them pass. We have no choice but to let them return to the Shikage. We can't risk a potential massacre in Konoha against unknown foes," said the ANBU route captain as he sheathed his blade, which the others ninjas did with their weapons. "It seems Leaf made a very wise choice, which I find very rare for ones as so stupid to hurt the former hero of the Leaf as the late Yondaime wanted him to be called," said the one called the leader of the group of ninja before nodding to the druids to start leaving. When the druids were out of sight, the ANBU route ninjas turned to face the strange and mysterious Shikage ninjas only to find they had vanished as well. "Danzo-sama and the council aren't going to like this," said the ANBU route captain before they all went poof to see their superiors and report in their failure. Shinigami Village several days later. "How did it go?" said Zangetsu sitting behind the desk as the druids handed him the large bag of money from the combined payments from the bounty on Orochimaru and Kabuto. "Not too much trouble, Zangetsu-sama, though Konoha Leaf ninjas tried to stop us under the command of the council and a man named Danzo," said the lead druid before giving his full report on the issue. "It was a good thing I had Aoshi and his team watch over you. I think that when the next Chunin exams rolls around in Konoha we'll have our teams enroll and show the Leaf just who we are," said Zangetsu, dismissing the druids to the darkness they came from. "Zangetsu-sama, I have received word from Tazuna from Wave Country, and the people fully support the trade agreement we set up between them and our village. They were most anxious to begin trade talks when told who founded the Shinigami Village," said Kimimaro, appearing from the shadows behind Zangetsu while wearing a fox mask quite similar to Kenpachi's own. "Good. Set up a meeting with the Kazekage next and have him come here for the meeting, as to make the Leaf worry about what is happening around them," said Zangetsu, knowing that Gaara would have no problem signing an alliance treaty. "At once, Zangetsu-sama," said Kimimaro, bowing his head before re-entering the shadows and heading to Suna. With that settled, Zangetsu now turned to his greatest nemesis that even he himself found was becoming impossible to defeat: paperwork. "Kenpachi better take care of Miss soon, because I am not going to do this for him when he officially becomes the Shikage," thought Zangetsu, hating this horrible amount of work already, and it was only the late morning and he still had 5 more stacks to go. Konoha Council Meeting Room 2 hours later. "You idiots!" yelled Tsunade, slamming her fists on the meeting table, which thanks to a seal designed by Jiraiya absorbed the power behind the blow, preventing the table from breaking into splintered sawdust. Her yell, however, was heard throughout Konoha and possibly reached the windows of the Fire Daimyo himself. That doesn't sound good, said the fire daimyo before returning back to reading his morning paper and drank his late morning tea. How could you even think of sending ANBU, much less root ANBU, after druids that belong to the Shikage? And for what, I ask you? For the money that they rightfully, mind you, earned in killing Orochimaru, Kabuto, and Sound Village all in one single moment. You are lucky that the letter attached to the messenger bird the Shikage sent us stated that our ninja made a mistake and hoped we didn't make it twice. Also, he pointed out that if we don't be more courteous to his people in the future, or if we prevent them from joining our next Chunin exams, they will report this to the Fire Daimyo and offer to replace us as his main form of ninja protection, effectively cutting off all funding to us and thus ending the village my grandfather founded, said Tsunade, scowling at all the council members, who had been trying to undermine her since she first arrived in Konoha as the Hokage. But Hokage-sama, you don't realize that amount of money could go to training more ANBU or the Uchiha prodigy, or, said Kakashi, only to be silenced by Tsunade's ever-terrifying death glare. You are lucky I don't smash you to pieces myself right now, Kakashi, since you are still needed in the Uchiha's development, not to mention working on the teamwork needed between him, Kiba, and Sakura, which from what I've read in your report is average at best, said Tsunade, having read the newly formed team's report along with the others. Naturally, the council protested in not promoting Sasuke before and long after the two Chunin examiners made their recommendations. Even more was that Inuzuka-tsum and Yasha Haruno protested on the fact their children didn't advance either, but were silenced when Tsunade pointed out that neither child made it past the preliminaries. Guy wanted to take Leon as his personal protege, no surprise there, after Niji received his Chunin rank along with Shikamaru, but was denied due to the need to reform the Genin teams to use in the next Chunin exams. As it stood, Shino would have to retake the Chunin exams again due to not facing anyone during the finals, along with Choji, Tenten, Ino, Lee, and Hinata, in making new Genin teams under the same, or different, sensei. The new Team 7 would be Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba under Kakashi. The new Team 8 would be Hinata, Shino, and Lee under Kurenai, with Guy still being Lee's personal taijutsu trainer. The new Team 9 was Ino, Tenten, and Choji under Asuma, who after some threats from Tsunade decided to work harder than he did with the original Ino Shikacho. Sasuke hates working with others, while Kiba only trusts Akamaru, with that starting to be strained due to the dislike of Kiba's new smug behavior and having Hinata as his soon-to-be bride, and Sakura just won't do any type of training without Sasuke. Though I'm sure coming right down to it that they will all work well together and make it to the third part of the exam, said Kakashi, giving his patented U-shaped eye of a smile. They better, Kakashi, and if you make any of your students late again, I will have he, she, or Kami help you, all three of them disqualified on the spot when their designated battle starts. Unlike the third Hokage, I am not going to try and amuse the stadium-sized mob of traitor-loving Uchiha fans of this village, so help me Kami, said Tsunade, sending some killer intent at the Jounin Cyclops, making the man shudder slightly after the woman stormed out of the room. Not like it matters. Whether they win or lose will still make them all Chunin before that day is out and produce a much better clan within the week, said Danzo, seeing as how the power was now officially under the council's direct control after some very, very clever political maneuvering after the recommendations. That meant every decision that was made in regard to promoting Chunin were now under his direct control regardless of the Hokage's protests. Hokage's office moments later. Can you believe those fools, Shizen? They think they can just weasel out of everything because of their position and where they live. They can't see just how big a target they place on themselves, and by the time they see that, it will be too late, and they will be all dead, said Tsunade, sitting in her chair and slumping in it before letting out a heavy sigh from all the frustration she was facing. Tsunade-sama, please calm down. I know it seems hopeless, but we just have to try and press forward or else all will be lost, said Shizen with the spoiled pig taunton, letting out several encouraging winks to state her opinion in the matter. I know, Shizen, it's just becoming too difficult at times to hold this place together, and every time I want to leave I see my family staring at me with a frown, said Tsunade, as she looked out the window and looked at the Hokage heads that came before her, all the while wondering what they would have done in her place. Both biological and surrogate, correct? Said Shizen, looking at the woman, wondering if she included Naruto into that family as well. You know what I'm talking about, Shizen. If only I could find some way to locate and communicate with him somehow, said Tsunade, knowing that her summons were pissed off at the village, though the Slug Queen herself knew that Tsunade had no power over such things, so allowed the Sannin to still be her summoner. Jiraiya was not so fortunate. Apparently Gamabunta was livid at the fact that Jiraiya knew just who Naruto's father was and still treated the kid like he was nothing. Taking the kid's money when finding Tsunade, not bothering to help in Naruto's training on the Rasengan, and telling him to do said training on his own, instead being more interactive with the blonde youth. Jiraiya also soon discovered that when push came to shove of a pissed-off summons, that depending on the summons can appear in the human world for a short time. In that short time Gamabunta pounded the Sannin into the ground before literally throwing him into the Leaf Hospital, where he was treated for broken bones, fractured skull, concussion, a broken nose, and hair loss from being what seemed to be scalped off by a sharp blade. On a lighter note, the hot springs on the female section was safe to use for several months without the feel of someone peeping on the other side. Kumo Village Reikage Tower 2 months later. The Yondaime Reikage was livid hearing that his informants had failed him yet again in finding out who was behind the assault on his outpost near Wave Country. Ever since his informants revealed that Mist along with all of Water Country had gone under a dramatic change in government, things had been going downhill. With the death of the late Water Daimyo and his brother that was the Mizukage, the warring factions had stopped trying to kill each other. Rumor had it that they stopped once information from both the Mizukage and Water Daimyo's own personal journals were revealed that they had planned this from the start. Such information immediate got everyone's attention in and outside of Water Country, as it meant that given time the hidden Mist Village would once more rise to its former glory that it had been infamous for. It didn't help that both Mizu and Kumo had been at each other's throats prior to the Bloodline Civil War on the account that Kumo refused to follow a simple trade agreement before the late Sandaime Reikage took office. What made the Yondaime Reikage even angrier was that he soon learned that the new and apparently improved Mizukage was none other than Kumo's own demon vessel Niyujuto. She was supposed to be his weapon, his pet, and his slave for as long as he had wished it to be so. If and when she became boring or had defied him too many times for his liking, he intended to sell her off to the Akatsuki organization for a substantial profit. Now that Niyujuto was the new Mizukage of Mist, he found her to be at the moment to be untouchable due to the woman's newfound loyalty in her people, who along with few anonymous figures, freed the people from the harsh life of old, and brought them new ones. If he were to attack her now, it would be total disaster on his end, for he would need approval from his own daimyo to begin such a thing. Not only that, but the new Water Daimyo was a female also, who seemed to have small thing for dogs and even signing an apparent contract with a dog tracking team as well. Upon her identity being revealed as Inuzuka Rin, it became apparent as to why such the woman had such close ties to dogs due to her bloodline limit. It was almost humorous as well as ironic to see both cat and dog work together rather than tear each other apart like nature intended. Also, more reports came in about the new Shinigami no Sato than he would have liked, since they were the new village, and already their Shikage, as he was called, was a major player in the shinobi world not seen since the Yondaime Hokage first took office in Konoha. There were rumors flying all over about the man, woman, or what the figure was, seeing as how some said the Kage wasn't human at all. The report stated that the Shikage took on missions himself to not become weakened by sitting in a desk filled with paperwork, and had actually found a way to conquer it. Not beat it, not win against it, but actually conquer the damn thing. There were some reports in front of him about the mysterious ninja, though mostly being rumors or whispers that had been heard from the dead or dying shinobi from various villages, missing ninja, or those categorized simply into other column. The entity that was the first death shadow of the village hidden in the Shinigami in just a few months' time had taken on all comers, who thought they could knock him and his hidden village down a peg. The village hidden in the rain despite the civil war they were having was the first to try and the first to find out the hard way what it was like taking on the unknown. The retaliation of the Shikage quickly made any other village think twice in trying to pick a fight or mess with the Shikage and his village. Within 3 days, Amigekyo no Sato was almost burned entirely down to nothing, with all its jutsus and knowledge in all things shinobi taken for the use of the hidden Shinigami village. There were survivors, but only those hiding in shelters that belonged to the side that the Shikage seemed to favor were worthy of being spared, that coincidentally the very people losing the civil war. It was said that the Shikage himself did it all without breaking a sweat, and that the only real witness to his path of destruction was one broken, bleeding, and dying Rain Ninja, who when questioned before his delayed death spoke nonsense for a good 15 minutes. Then when the man was only mere minutes from dying, he spoke clear and whispery little sentences when telling what exactly happened, so only those around him could hear his dying words. The demon of Shinigami, the demon of Shinigami. The monster came at us with an unholy rage-filled power that killed all, but me. When he looked down upon me, it was like staring into the eye of a dragon preparing to pass judgment on my soul. Knowing that I am the dying survivor to my village's destruction is not mercy, it's torture, for even now he makes me see the dead around me that I will become. Beware of the demon of Shinigami, reading the echoing words that seemed to speak into the Raikage's own skull before reading the rest of the report on how the man was soon dead from sudden convulsions, but not before he began speaking again, only in more randomly tongue and muttering apologies to what seemed to be an invisible force to the now dead man. Maybe he wasn't seeing things. Maybe he actually saw someone that the doctors could not write before he died. Could he have seen the Shikage himself right in the hospital? Impossible. Then again, one cannot understand the unknown when you have never faced such a very imposing being before, thought the Yandame Raikage, wondering if he should double the guard at the gates to be extra sure the Shikage didn't decide to pay him a visit. Konoha 3 days later, nightfall. The cold air that was running through the village at this particular night was ungodly, as even the hot springs seemed to be less steamy than usual if anyone bothered to look, that is. The ANBU guarding the walls and gate that night were freezing while trying to stay warm while staying hidden from potential enemies that might find their hidden position. The people that would stay awake to enjoy the nightlife stayed inside for once, and went to bed early, not wanting to be awake on an unnaturally cold night. How right they were about the unnatural cold part. Just as the night became unnaturally cold, there was an unnatural fog like mist flowing into the streets in the north gate, that if followed heading straight would take you directly to Rice Country. The guards at the gate knew something was up and got ready to fight, only to feel sleepy and fall asleep at their posts, effectively preventing any of them from alerting anyone of the coming presence that would soon pass through Konoha's walls. Walking through the empty streets, past the closed buildings, and under the cover of darkness to their desired target. The Hokage Graveyard. Contrary to what people would think, the Hokages of years past were never incinerated to protect their secrets, but rather were buried with them. Their bodies perfectly intact, with a preserved seal placed on them in secret to honor the fallen fire shadows along with their spouses. The said spouses were to be cremated and then be placed in an urn so they could be buried along with the one they loved. Yandame and his wife Uzumaki Kushina were examples of such traditions. However, if one were to prey on such knowledge from living in the Leaf Village, it could prove to be a possible risk to the village later on. A said example was the ever vile Orochimaru, who was able to get the necessary DNA samples from knowing of the location to use in future failed experiments in making several human beings with the Shodaime bloodline. It never occurred to anyone that the late Sandaime, before he died, had repeated history once more by showing the graveyard to one other outside potential Hokage candidates. It was when the person he showed the graveyard to was just a 5-year-old boy, just several years before the Uchiha massacre started. That boy was, at the time, named Uzumaki Naruto. The Hokage had taken his time out for that one day to take Naruto on a special visit to the graveyard, knowing that in the day the place ironically blossomed with life. It was almost as if the Shodaime's bloodline was actually working, even with its body long being dead for many years. On that day, the Sandaime had taken Naruto to pay his respects to the late Yandame in his own way, explaining to the boy that given time all would be explained on why he was being shown such a sacred place. Unfortunately, such a day never came, as Orochimaru had killed the old Sandaime in the sand/sound invasion with a sword to the old man's chest. However, it had been widely believed by many in the ninja ranks, had Orochimaru not summoned the other two late fire shadows to weaken the old Hokage, the man's most gifted student turned Sannin, turned traitor, would have lost the battle and his life. Now here in this graveyard of fire shadows stood a large formation of druids, with half of them carrying shovels, with the other with long torches to see where they were headed, and where to begin digging when reaching the correct spot. Once they got into the correct spots where they needed to be, they started digging. Uzumaki Naruto, now having renamed himself Uzumaki Kenpachi and current Shodaime Shikage, had decided that the 4 graves that held the previous fire shadows' remains were being dishonored by the villagers themselves. It became clear to Kenpachi that all the Hokages that came before Tsunade and all they taught while living in a village had been forgotten, as their years as ninja warriors seemed to be only recalled in one of the many boring little history lessons Irika gave at the Ninja Academy. As if that in itself wasn't bad enough. Be careful where your shovels strike in the earth's soil. Shikage-sama was very explicit on there being very little damage to the coffins as possible, said Kimimaro, wearing his ANB uniform, along with a druid cloak and fox skull mask given to him by Kenpachi himself. Kimimaro swore he would treasure and honor it by going on the most worthy of missions given to him by Kenpachi when his services were required. As such, this was one of those times. Do you think anyone will notice what we are doing? Said Sajin Kamimura, who was now the owner of the sword that had once belonged to the late Sannin Orochimaru. The much larger mast-shaped entity appeared alongside Kimimaro, who was watching like the sword owner as the druids were digging 6 spots in the earth. All the while Sajin looked through his mask around the area every so often for any possible interruptions that may have arisen during this time of removing the coffins from the earth. Sajin, like Yuichiro, was a half-demon fox, though unlike Yuichiro had the animalistic face of a fox down to the whiskers, rather than that of a human-looking one. His face made the people, who saw him, called him monster, demon, and various other things before he had been captured several months prior to Orochimaru's demise. He was attacked by the said Sannin after he had been heavily poisoned by the Sannin and was used to help the Sannin to further achieve immortality. Had it not been for the fact that the demon side and blood inside of Sajin had rejected Orochimaru's cruel attempts at possessing him via immortality jutsu, the half-demon fox more than suspected that he would have been the next vessel of the late snake Sannin. When Kenpachi, Zangetsu, and Kimimaro entered the row of prison cells used to house failure from various experiments, they had found the large fox man heavily chained with countless chakra-draining seals all over his body. When Kenpachi ripped the prison cell door off its hinges, he fried the chakra seals from the half-demon's body by overloading their powers with his own. Upon looking at the 3, Sajin had immediately bowed his head to the left in shame, trying to hide his face deeper into the darkness of his prison cell, expecting his rescuers to look upon him with disgust before turning around to leave him in the room to rot. Much was Sajin's surprise when Kenpachi sliced through the chains holding him down with his sword before he, Kimimaro, and Zangetsu lift him up to carry him out of the room. When Sajin was better rested, Kenpachi paid him a visit without the spiky bell at the tips like hair, but a more passive version of the man, though the eye patch remained on the right eye. He also saw a half-demon fox girl on his right shoulder looking at him with interest, as if she had never seen anyone like him before. After much talking later, Sajin pledged his entire life to Kenpachi, though the latter told him it was unnecessary, as he did it for a fellow outcast like himself. That he too knew what it was like to be called such harsh names when no one around you had any right to judge you without even getting to know you. If anything, that little part of the conversation brought Sajin's loyalty practically up to the equivalent level of Kimimaro's own loyalty. It was almost scary. Still, such scars from the past do not fade easily, and as such Sajin wished to hide his fox-like facial appearance from the world via wooden-shaped mask that surrounded his entire face. Kenpachi agreed on the terms that one day, he would remove the mask and would stop wearing it afterwards. A term that Sajin reluctantly, but willingly agreed upon, since there was always a chance that the mask could be destroyed in battle. The mask itself was designed by Sajin himself so he could see out of it with small thin-like lines in the front, and due to his keen fox-like eyes, anyone thinking that half-demon fox was at a disadvantage was very mistaken. Not until tomorrow morning, or a few days after, I imagine. Very few know of this place, let alone wish to guard it due to the secrecy of where the graveyard is. However, should I be wrong, I know I can count on you to help me vanquish any and all obstacles that stand in our way, said Kimimaro, who knew the Sajin was like him and loyal to the Shikage and followed the eye patch wearing Death's shadow without question. Moments later, one of the smaller groups of the druids digging stopped, having reached his target. He then moved his shovel away before brushing away the dirt, picked up the wooden box containing the desired item inside, and then with black-gloved hands gently picked the box that they had been digging for that was under the Yondame's tombstone. Carefully the druid walked over to Kimimaro, kneeling on one knee, opened the box lid, and presented the large golden object to the right-hand man of Kenpachi, who took it just as carefully as the druid had the protective wooden casing. It was the urn of Uzumaki Kushina. "Can you hear her sorrow? She crying?" said Sajin, who received a single nod from Kimimaro, who tucked the urn away for safekeeping. "What did you expect? She is crying over what this village has done to her son since her death and bringing him into this world. However, that will stop once she is carefully in her new resting place especially made for her by Shikage-sama," said Kimimaro, hearing the cries of the woman's soul and how they could hurt her precious little boy like that. "Yes. Her along with the others," said Sajin, looking at the druids digging deeper for the coffins that contained the 4 late Hokage's remains. "One of 5 down with 4 holes to dig left. You do know it is against the law of any place, city, or ninja village to rob a grave, much less that of a late Kage, right?" said Hitaki Kakashi, a nearby tree above them, reading his perverted book casually as if the people below him were nothing to him. He wasn't alone either, as 20 ANBU ninja were all around the group below with weapons drawn ready to slay the intruders for their trespassing. "It seems we have been discovered," said Kimimaro, looking up at Kakashi, recognizing him from the bingo book, seeing the man had not worn an ANBU mask like the others. "Yes. How do you wish to proceed?" said Sajin, glaring at Kakashi and letting out his killer intent at the man, who felt the tremendous killer intent making him put his book away, getting serious. "I can tell by your killing intent you're not normal," said Kakashi, raising his headband to reveal his Sharingan eye that he was infamous for to help him see the truth. "That I won't reveal anything to you, Hataki, nor will be telling you anything or what knowledge we may possess. If captured, we are prepared to end our lives taking whatever secret we hold with us to protect the one we serve," said Sajin with such conviction that Kakashi believed the taller figure would indeed end his life. Also, was the Leaf Jounin imagining things, or did the same person seem to hate him for some reason? Well, if that's the case, then can we at least talk with some civility before we start to go at it? Like, for example, I asked you a question, and if you want, either of you can answer the question or not, depending on what it is. How's that? Said Kakashi, almost feeling the itch to read his book again, since he felt he could calm them down enough to prevent an all-out fight here. "Speak your first question, Hataki team, before we decide to slaughter you along with the rest of these weaklings," said Kimimaro, letting loose his own killer intent, making all the ANBU on edge at feeling such hate towards their very being. "Well, if you want to get right into it, who am I to stop you? All right then, question number 1 is this: who is the man who that has taken the title of Shikage?" said Kakashi, focusing his Sharingan eye on the two, hoping the two would crack under its hypnotic gaze. They didn't even blink, and they didn't answer. At the moment, the druids from one of the spots finished and proceeded to lift up the gold-colored coffin from the earth, holding it steady in their hands. The druids then proceeded and move away from the rectangular and empty grave before stopping once more near the graveyard entrance/exit. 2 down with 3 remaining. Okay, question number 2 is: what are you planning to do with the 4 coffins that hold our ever-so-sacred Hokages? Said Kakashi, though his tone was more serious given the one of the coffins held his sensei. "If you must know, we are relocating them to a more sacred and secure spot away from this tainted shinobi village they once proudly called home. You dishonor them, so our leader has decided that we take them someplace where they will be treated with respect," said Sajin, taking a hard step forward, shaking the ground slightly beneath him, Kimimaro, and the druids. Needless to say, it got Kakashi's and the other Leaf Ninja's attention. That was a lot of force placed under that single step, and from the looks of it, the tall guy wasn't even trying very hard, thought Kakashi, narrowing his eyes at the masked giant, who retaliated by letting loose an even larger amount of killing intent to snuff out the Leaf Jounin's piercing look. 3 down with 2 to go as the druids lift yet another coffin. Question #3: are you a threat to Konoha? Said Kakashi, noticing that the ANBU behind were becoming tenser and wondering why the Sharingan user didn't order them to stop the druids. "I'll answer your question with one of my own. Do you mean the village in general, or the overall populace?" said Kimimaro, channeling some chakra into his mask, making the eye holes flash red to intimidate the Jounin and his team. "Both, actually," said Kakashi, hearing the shoveling in the background being the only real noise in the night, along with the barely heard fire from the torches that some of the other druids held. 4 down with 1 left to dig up. "Yes, and somewhat no, depending on who were out to kill Hataki," said Sajin, leering at He-Man while letting out a small yet still dark laugh into the night. Kakashi didn't need either of the two in order to get the hint. Due to the bloodlust from the tall helmet, one was more than enough for him. "Take them alive, but don't hesitate to kill if restraining them proves a fruitless endeavor to achieve," said Kakashi, drawing his kunai from his pouch ready to fight. Final coffin removed from grave, mission objective completed. "It would appear that the time has come to show these fools what it means to fight against the forces of Shikage-sama," said Sajin, drawing out his sword, while Kimimaro just walked over to the gates near the other druids before drawing out his bone tonfas that he had been secretly making during the conversation. "You know what to do, Sajin-san, just don't create too much noise," said Kimimaro, as he knew that Sajin would rather kill himself than willingly fail Kenpachi in any mission. Such arrogance in thinking one person could take on the son of the White Fang and his small army of Leaf ANBU beside him, said Kakashi, smirking at them, thinking this was going to be easier than he thought, and may not even need his Sharingan. "The arrogance is yours, Hataki Kakashi, for thinking that name alone gives you the power to best me, knowing that is all you are to your late father," His worthless runt and poor excuse of a son that he didn't kill before taking his own life to remove his shame not of failing a mission, but knowing he helped conceived you, said as Sajin drew his sword, revealing to them it was the Kusanagi sword that was responsible for the late Sandame's death. How dare you wield such a tainted sword against us, you freak of nature, said one of the Anbu, only back away several steps, feeling the killer intent from Sajin increase threefold. Shut up and fight, you fool leaf ninja! Roar Tenken! Said Sajin, as chakra came out of his sword, creating a giant version of his arm, holding his sword in his hand above him before brining it down upon the shocked ninjas. Kakashi was glad he could move as fast as he did, otherwise he may have been crushed by the sheer brute force of the usual power that the giant man had displayed. Another thing that bothered Kakashi was that the man he had come to identify from his partner as Sajin did not call the Kusanagi its original name, but rather he called it Tenken? For Kakashi it made no sense, since that was the sword that had slain the third and nearly killed the Tsunade when Jiraiya was sent to find her to become the fifth Hokage of Konoha. Lethal force authorized. Kill him, said Kakashi before making the hand signs for Rikiri and charged Sajin, who used his power to take out a quarter of the forces opposing him. Kakashi's attack would have succeeded had a spiked wall of bones shot up in front of him several feet in between him and Sajin, while a few shorter ones were able to stab Kakashi in the feet or ankles, making him lose his Chidori in the process. As much as I would like you to deliver some much-needed punishment on them, Sajin-san, we must be going. Shikage-sama does not like tardiness when it comes to completing missions that are important to him, said Kimimaro, rising to his full height, slamming his hand down onto the ground, using his bloodline to create a new clan technique, though it was strictly defensive one. Right behind you, Kimimaro-san, said Sajin, who followed the group and made their escape from the graveyard. Kimimaro? Orochimaru's bodyguard is alive, thought Kakashi, closing his headband over his Sharingan eye, biting back the urge to scream, and at the moment, he really wanted to scream. Call for reinforcements and summon Tsunade-sama to the hospital so we can help the wounded, said an Anbu ninja wearing a ferret mask before he and several others took off after the grave robbers. Little did they know this was two missions in one. Hyuga compound moments later. It didn't take long for the village alarm to sound, and the Hyuga clan's giant home went under immediate lockdown, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. As for Hinata herself, she was awakened by the running around that could be heard outside of her door. The possibility that her sister Hanabi heard the commotion through her door as well, since they were right next to each other, with Niji's room being across from them, being their personal protector and relative. Hinata shivered slightly as she remembered the latest Hyuga clan elders meeting her father had attended just a few days ago concerning her sister. Due to Hinata's special marriage, Hanabi was soon to be given title of heiress to the Hyuga clan. Hayashi was livid that they wanted to put Niji and Hanabi together when his youngest of two daughters became of age, since they wanted strong Hyuga to run the clan. Hayashi had immediately denounced such a union since it was not possible genetically, and it was wrong morally, though the elders said keeping with tradition was a must. Hayashi, though, had further explained that while Niji was indeed his nephew, which caused any form of union to not be possible due to the genetic similarities between Hayashi and Hisashi. Being the clan head's twin made it to be as if Niji was Hayashi's own illegitimate son along with Hinata and Hanabi's half-brother. The Hyuga clan elders were less than pleased and planned to go another route when the right time presented itself. After all, it was to ensure that Hanabi would one day be married to a strong individual of their choice they could trust to produce a strong Hyuga offspring. Now Hinata had to comfort herself with her little fox plushie her father through unknown sources was able to get her in secret, since it reminded her of Kenpachi when he was still Naruto. He'll stop this marriage from happening. He won't let it happen to me, I know he won't, thought Hinata, holding the plushie tighter, wishing beyond all things that it was her foxy hero. There was a knock at her room door, bringing her further back to the living world away from which she barely lingered, wanting to re-enter the dream world. Hinata-sama, I need you to come to the door, said a deep unknown voice from behind rice paper the door, making Hinata frown as her door was not locked and could have been opened by the voice behind it. This could mean he was a servant she had yet to meet in the large house, or the unknown being was an enemy that had infiltrated her home like before, only this time his was to trick her and possibly assassinate her at her room door. Who is it? Said Hinata in a tired, sleepy voice, and whispered even in a more serious and lower one to activate her Byakugan to see beyond her room. A messenger, though my orders were to wait by the door to receive the message from the one whose soul belongs to you, said the kneeling figure that from what Hinata could see with her eyes was not from her clan or Konoha in general. The demon mask was but one dead giveaway. Then the man's words pierced through her head and her heart swelled knowing just who the figure was talking about, as only one person could think of such words to say to her. She got up from her bed and went over to the door, pushing it open only to stop after 2 inches by the person on the opposite side. "Please tell me what the message that Kenpachi is," said Hinata, being as polite as she could be at the ungodly hour. "I cannot speak his words, for they would be tainted by me. However, I am to deliver this letter from him to you that say his words," said the demon masked wearing ninja, handing her envelope with a black ink-colored seal in the shape of the Shinigami's head. "Thank you, Onisama," said Hinata, taking the envelope, feeling the smoothness and the weight of the parchment inside of it. "Please, you honor me enough as it is by speaking to me. If anything, call me Hanaya if and when we meet again at a later date. For now, I must go before your cousin or sister spot me here near your room," said Hanaya before seemingly teleported from her sight as she shut her door and locked it to prevent anyone else from entering. Carefully, Hinata opened the envelope and unfolded the letter, reading its contents slowly to savoir in every word written on it. "Dearest Heim of all Heims, if you are reading this, then Hanaya had delivered the letter successfully to you, and for that I am grateful to no end. Now I know that you can once more know how much I love you with every ounce of my soul, which I give to you without hesitation. Know that I am with you always and will protect you from the shadows, as I cannot be there in person. I am fully aware that you are put into unusual arranged marriage with Kiba team and Sasuke team, which, as you can imagine, pisses me off to no end. Make no mistake, my Heim, I am not mad at you since you had no say in the matter. I'm more pissed off at the bastards who set the whole thing up while I was away and unable to do something. Ever since when Team 7's first mission in Wave Country, when we were all ambushed by the Demon Brothers, I have never been as powerless since then as I am now. However, I am not without ways of making sure you are safe from harm or from those 2 teams' pervert, mainly Kiba's, like ways. Even now I have special agents assigned specifically to monitor and protect you from harm. You already met one of them, so you can focus on the Chunin exams. I'm having my teams participate in that as well, though between you, me, and this letter they are more than qualified for having the rank. I will be there to see you again, though how I won't say until you see me on the day my teams arrive to compete in the exams. Make sure you and your team, as long as Sasuke team and Kiba team aren't with you, makes it to the 3rd part of the Chunin exams. I know you can do it because I believe in you without hesitation and know you are strong no matter what anyone else says. Love. Uzumaki Kenpachi, the Shodaime Shikage of Shinigami no Sato. P.S. Here's a picture of what I look like. With that last word read, Hinata looked down at the photograph attached to the letter of her love before her eyes went wide as dinner plates. Hinata then used the last ounce of mental strength to carefully refold the letter, walk over to her bed, tuck the letter with photograph away in her diary, sit on her bed, then proceeded to faint with steam coming out of her ears due to the letter, and a nosebleed caused from the photograph. Kenpachi-kun is such a sexy fox, thought Hinata before re-entering her dreams that were with her and Kenpachi doing all sorts of things that would have made Jiraiya envious and want to make a supersized novel of Ika Ika Paradise. On a hill outside the gates of Konoha 10 minutes later. "Do you think they will get to the safe zone in time?" said Hitsugaya to Shiro, watching with interest with his ever-beautiful, possibly too beautiful, and taller wife Hitsugaya Matsumoto Ranjaku, or Ran as she liked to be called, standing beside him. The young man had come from Water Country several years before the bloodline civil war started with his mother and father, who despite the growing tensions back home at the time loved each other dearly. His aunt from his mother's side of the family stayed in mist, and chose to keep her bloodline limit hidden in case things became worse for those like her with special abilities. And things did get worse, but not before Toshiro's aunt met this wonderful, at least she thought, man, who helped give her a child. A child that, like her, had the power to change the way water could be manipulated into ice via her bloodline limit, passed down as all genetic traits do from parent to child. That child's name was Haku. When Kenpachi heard of Toshiro's abilities, he instantly knew just who the man had been related to, sending Kimimaro and Zangetsu to search high and low for the man. After all, it was only right to inform the man of his cousin, how they encountered each other, and to regretfully inform the man Haku's untimely demise at the hands of Hatake Kakashi. When Toshiro found out, he was devastated by the news, but when he learned that Haku died nobly in battle to protect his precious person, the ice user knew it was a good death worthy of his family heritage. In light of this news, the now last member, as far as Toshiro now knew, of his clan, pledged his loyalty to Kenpachi in order to continue honoring the short, but powerful friendship that had happened between the fox vessel and Haku. For Ranjaku, it was simply follow her husband's lead, knowing that once the man made up his mind in such a matter, not even she could change his mind unless he did it voluntarily. Of course they will, Shiro-chan. You should know better than to not have better faith in those two, said Ranjaku, leaning down and hugging her husband and consuming his head into her quite large female assets, making the man blush while fighting the soon-to-be nosebleed that was to come if she didn't stop. How the short man hated being called that embarrassing nickname. Fortunately, the shorter of the two was saved from embarrassment when static came into their earpieces, meaning someone was about to talk to one or both of them. It meant it was of the utmost importance. Toshiro-san, what is the status of current situation in Konoha concerning the mission? Said the voice of Kenpachi over the headset in the frosty white-haired man's ear that had made all fooling around from his wife be put on hold. The pout on her face proved she wasn't happy about it either. Everything is going according to plan, sir. Hanaya reported it not long ago, and told me he gave Hyuga Hinata your letter. He also stated to me that he is going to continue his spying on Konoha while protecting Hinata until a month before the Chunin exams start, said Toshiro, putting 2 fingers to his earpiece and relaying what was going on. Good. Can you see my retrieval team at all, Ranjaku-san? Said Kenpachi, wondering just how far his team had gotten getting what he asked for. Kimimaro, Sajin, and the large group of druids are heading their way along with what seems to be what you asked them to retrieve, Shikage-sama. However, I now see that there are some ANBU chasing after them, sir, and closing fast, said Ranjaku, frowning at this new situation as the small group of ninjas were closing in and going directly for her comrades, while the village alert system that had kicked in not long ago was still wailing like a banshee. When the team I sent is safe, freeze their pursuers to a standstill and smoke the life out of them, said Kenpachi with malice and hate for the NBU, who he knew had deliberately failed to protect him despite the orders given to them by the late Sandame. Yes, Shikage-sama, said Ranjaku and Toshiro, knowing that the sound behind the man's words meant to cause as much pain as humanly possible. And that also doing it as inhumanly possible wasn't a bad thing either. Sit upon the frosted heavens, Hirinmaru, said Toshiro, drawing his sword, sending his chakra through the tip of the blade, creating a large ice dragon came down upon Konoha, creating an ice barrier that cut off the ANBU team's pursuit. My turn, growl Haniko, said Ranjaku, unleashing her own sword's power and sending her blade turn to ash upon the ANBU forces, attacking them in the shape of a large cat, mauling them all in the process. About 10 minutes after these attacks struck the retrieval team of Kimimaro, Sajin, and the druids carrying the coffins met up with the two waiting. It would seem our mission was a success, and it's time to go home to report to Shikage-sama, said Kimimaro, looking to his right, seeing the sudden appearance of Zangetsu from a newly opened portal. You all did extremely well. Now let's go before the leaf reinforcements arrive to delay us further, said Zangetsu before letting them all pass into the portal and then himself letting it close just as Jiraiya along with several jounin arrived on the scene. Damn, they got away, said Jiraiya, knowing from the description of the last person he saw was the one who had led the recruitment of various missing ninja, among others, to join the Shinigami no Sato that had sprung up over the ashes of sound. What do we do, Jiraiya-sama? Said a jounin with a scar along his chin area. Nothing except tell Hokage-sama that her family and predecessors have all been taken from her yet again, said Jiraiya, knowing she was going to super pissed at what had just happened right under and the village's own nose, meaning the super pervert was going to send to the hospital yet again. Good thing he was a fast healer. Chapter 9, Road to the Chunin Exams. When the alarms finally died down on the village hidden in the leaf, all of the people were shocked to learn that the graves of the 4 previous fire shadows and one's own wife had been disturbed. That the graves of their previous leaders had been taken from right under them like taking a candy from a sleeping baby, and that the ones responsible for the theft came from the village hidden in the Shinigami. Out of everyone upset by this were Tsunade and Jiraiya, since they were 2 of the oldest members of Konoha to know all of or related to those that had their remains taken away. The 3 days of talking later, the council was quite livid and demand she finally take action against the Shikage and his village like they should have done originally. After they all found out what happened to Rain Village, the council had been adamant about sending spies into Shinigami Village, which Tsunade did, wanting to know more about the new hidden village herself. They were all sent back maimed and bloody in a box with a note on it telling Leaf not to stick its nose where it doesn't belong. It kept Tsunade from sending more lives to their deaths until she learned why the Shikage seemed so hostile towards Konoha when Mist, Suna, and Waterfall representatives were all welcome to meet with the entity. Full trade relations were set up between Shinigami and Wave, increasing the flow of their economic state several times over. Even the Spring Princess/actress Yuki met the mysterious man to do business with him for future missions she may ask of his ninja to do. She had even suggested that given his permission and cooperation she could perform her movie roles in his hidden village with a significant sum going to Shinigami as a token of her thanks. Though thanks for what exactly no one knew. After hearing the entire report from a temporarily assigned to wheelchaired Kakashi and several ANBU, Tsunade sent a letter to the Fire Daimyo as fast as she could. Shizen had looked it over, and after correcting it several times, sent it off to have the man give his blessing on Leaf going to war with the Shikage. To go into this war in their current state of favor with the all-wise and powerful Fire Daimyo, it would be unwise to engage such a conflict without asking. The response they got from the Fire Daimyo was not the one Tsunade, Shizen, Jiraiya, and all the council members expected. Dear Hokage-sama, I have received your request to give you permission to go to war with Shinigami due to what happened in Konoha a little over a week ago. Believe me when I say that I fully understand your pain in this matter, since most of your family, friends, and sensei were among the late Hokages buried there. However, before you sent me this letter I also received one from the Shikage himself explaining his said actions towards the Leaf. He also explained to me in his letter how those who came to receive the bounties had been denied at first by your council. Can you tell me what was the appropriate amount for the slain bodies, who I dare not speak out of spite for them? Then later on several of your ninjas, whether under your command or not, tried to take the very sum they were given away. I am most displeased right now with what news I have heard, and while I do not deplore the actions of the Shikage, I do not sanction them either. That said, I have decided that due to the popularity of the hidden Shinigami village with various villages and countries, I have no choice but to deny your request. However, I am not without mercy, and the Shikage has taken into account your personal feelings on this issue, Hokage-sama, given your relationship to those inside the coffins that were taken. So by the power invested in me, I will increase your budget by the stated percentage I told you in the previous letter. The Fire Daimyo. P.S. As for your budget increase, Hokage-sama, you can thank the Shikage for that. What kind of person takes from us then vouches for us to have our funding restored by the Fire Daimyo to such an extent? Said Danzo, frowning at the copy of the letter as he read it over and over again, trying to see what he could not with his one good eye. How troublesome. Don't you get it? The Shikage knows that we are the village hosting the Chunin exams again this year. This guy clearly knows that most of the funding we are given to us now by the Fire Daimyo will be used to make ourselves presentable at the time, said Naro Shikaku, reading over the copy of the letter, understanding the knowledge given to them by the Fire Daimyo. What the man should do is simply give us our original budget back and help us invade Rice Country and attack the hidden Shinigami village, said Inuzuka-tsum, who had seen this like the others as one insult after the other. As if we had any leverage in a negotiation to make him consider such an action. If we go through with starting a war with the Shikage and his village, it could lead to a war with Suna, Mist, Waterfall, and Spring Country should she decide to help him, said Shibi, as he saw the logic in staying away from potential confrontations right now. Why that woman even agreed to meet the man and arrange a treaty with the Shikage is beyond me. She originally hired our ninja out to help, and now she has simply betrayed us to that new shinobi village. It's insulting, said Haruno Yasha in her arrogant-sounding voice, while wondering what could have possessed the young princess/actress to just sign a treaty with her shortly after the village's founding. What's insulting is you all ignored the fourth Hokage's dying wish and tried repeatedly to undermine the third Hokage in terms of the boy's life and being raised elsewhere than the orphanage, said Tsunade, knowing this all came back to Naruto and how the harsh treatment of the villagers had come back to bite them in the ass. The people running the orphanage had been bitten first at the hands of Tsunade, having them executed privately, but painfully for their actions. When they defended themselves, saying it was to teach the demon a lesson, they soon lost the power to speak, as they either had their throats ripped out or they're blown off by Tsunade's monstrous strength. The ones that had remained neutral to Naruto at the very least were allowed to keep their jobs at severely reduced pay so the children still at the orphanage could still be taken care of. Regardless of the past with the demon, it can't be undone though. If it were up to me, I would have killed the monster the day he was sealed, said Danzo, knowing that under his iron fist the demon vessel would have made a great weapon for him to control. One more comment like that, Danzo, and I'll see to it you will be joining the rest of your ancestors in hell where they belong. Right now we need to focus on what is ahead of us, and that is the Chunin exams. We have already received a small amount of applicants this year from Suna, Mist, Waterfall, with an average sum from Kumo, IWA, and finally we have an alarmingly large quantity of teams from Shinigami, said Tsunade, knowing what was to come next from the council before them. Deny them. After what they did they should be gutted like figs and hang by their very organs from the Hokage Tower, said Danzo, as he is not about to have this new village make his leaf look like idiots and fools. We can't. If we deny them, then everyone else will drop out as well. All of the hidden villages are only entering because of Shinigami, and they want to see as well as find out just how powerful they truly are. What better way to do it than by using Konoha for the Chunin exams? With the various feudal lords and fellow Kages watching with from the stand in anticipation, it would be suicidal to deny them, said Tsunade, looking down at the list of teams with the Shinigami covering most of the list by almost over half of all the others total. Considering the amount of genin we have flooding in, we should remove as many as we can right away before the fighting portion of the exam. I say we just have them proceed to the second part of the exam in the Forest of Death and see who are left to remaining for the preliminaries if we have them, said Inazukatsum, knowing that no one liked the written part of the exam since it was clearly for mental geniuses like the Aburame and Nara clans. We may have to, considering the large list we have here of applicants total from the other villages prevents us from putting them even in our largest room for the written test, said Tsunade, looking over teams with the names given to her by the Fire Daimyo, though for the Shinigami names that went with their teams were not written. A request made by the elderly Rice Daimyo to the Fire Daimyo. This should be beneficial since we can use the Forest of Death to ambush the Shinigami teams for future interrogation to help us get our spies and teams into their village, said Danzo, smirking at the thought only to have it removed by a forceful glare by Tsunade. We will do no such thing. The Shikage himself is staying for the duration of the entire exam along with the other Kages, and they have spies everywhere. They will most likely get word of this from their spy network, which I remind you far outdoes Jiraiya's, and declare full-scale war upon us with their allies. Given our current condition, we would be walking into a slaughterhouse with us being the preverbal cow, said Tsunade, hating the fact that all Danzo and the other council members thought about were conflicts with other shinobi villages. Then place restrictions on them when they enter village, said Haruno Yasha, having no desire to have those barbarians, as she originally called them, near her home or her little angel of a daughter. If we do that, then it would have to place on others including our own to show fairness, and even if we could simply isolate them due to the recent incident, I highly doubt the Kazekage will be pleased. He seems to be on good terms with the Shikage and signed an officially announced alliance with them shortly after the meeting with Temari, even being offered as part of an arranged marriage to seal the deal, said Tsunade, seeing the scowl on the pink-haired woman's face at her idea/demand being shot down. Just what we need, another demon spawn running around in another village while the one we once had gone rogue and simply disappeared. He should have been made into a weapon, said Danzo, seeing his greatest chance for making Konoha a military power structure unequaled by another taken away from by his old senile friend Sarutobi Sandame. And you should have all honored the Yandame's wishes, but you all chose to be disrespectful, yelled Tsunade, tired of hearing the same old song from Danzo at nearly every council meeting she had with these old hags that tired to press upon her their so-called experience running the village. In her experience, they couldn't handle running water. Shinigami no Sato. You didn't have to agree to all the terms, Kenpachi. I know you have your father's clan to revive while putting it under your mother's name, but you have to put Hyuga Hinata's feelings into consideration in agreeing to this, said Zangetsu, as he was now wondering why in all of Kami's sweet little creation had his vessel agreed to that part of the alliance agreement. It's true it was optional, but like Hinata I also have feelings for Temari, and I know once I found a way to explain it to Hinata she will understand why I did what I did. In addition, Temari being strong like Hinata, she also knows, accepts, and understands people like me through Gaara. That was just several of the reasons why I love her just like I do Hinata. My one and only real stipulation to the arranged marriage was that Hinata marries me and bears my children first, otherwise there can be no such union between me and Temari. A stipulation, which as you know Gaara agreed to since he knows of my strong feelings for my sweet Haim of a Hyuga, said Kenpachi, knowing that it would be very difficult for Hinata to accept sharing him with another woman, but he believed she would understand. Now that you have your personal life reset back on track, we need to go over more Kage-related matters, with Renji reporting in from his mission in finding Akatsuki's main base. Since you killed 3 of the 9 members, they have to replenish their ranks, which they did with Kisame shortly after you killed him, said Zangetsu, having sent the team of Aburai Renji, Hajime Saito, Sita Sojiro, and Kagaya Kimimaro to look for the main base, going right for the jugular of the organization that had been a bane on so many demon vessels since it was first started. As if the villages that they came from weren't bad enough. It's high time we put an end to this organization once and for all. As I told Itachi in our last encounter nearly some 2.5 years ago, they would be the hunted, and I will not make myself out to be a liar. Akatsuki has seen its last sunrise, said Kenpachi, getting up from his chair, making a shadow clone to handle paperwork, and left with Zangetsu back in his body to head out to deal with Akatsuki. Parikaku would have to be tortured a little while longer by Yuichiro for a while, as he and Ayasegawa Yumichika played with her, as she liked to call it. The poor bastards. Yes, yelled the spirit of Zaraki Kenpachi, rubbing his hands together with a sadistic smile on his face, knowing he was going to spill more blood like last time. Konoha 2 days later. Hinata was practicing her gentle fist style on a padded practice stump at training ground number 3 when she sensed Inuzuka Kiba walking towards her with a smile on his face. A smile that she simply loathed and hated, since he started bragging one night to some people how he had simply won against the Kyuubi in nabbing his Hinata in terms of marriage. He had already made several advances on her to get an early start, as he put it, on their relationship as husband and wife. She brushed him off as one would a strand of hair on one's shoulder that didn't belong, and scowled at him before leaving his presence each time he tried. Now Kiba was trying again for what seemed to be the 6th time. Or was it the 7th? Hinata lost track after the 3rd attempt, when she had slapped the drink he had given her away one day, not trusting the contents of the glass since he had that all-too-hungry dog-like lust in his eyes. "Hey my Hinata-heim, how are you this wonderful day?" said Kiba, trying to sweet-talk her once again and to be more happy with their relationship. Among other things. Granted, the Inuzuka had to share what he considered his Hinata with the Uchiha, but as long as he got his own set of pups from the girl, he didn't give a damn. All he wanted was to be with her as long as he could have her when the Uchiha didn't. Besides, should the young Inuzuka ever find a few ladies along the way to take in on the side, then who was he to argue with it, since Hinata very well couldn't? The Uchiha wouldn't care so long as they didn't get in his way as the tragic avenger he told everyone so he could kill his older brother. "Don't call me that," Kiba-san, deciding to be as formal as she could, hoping that the ever-ego-inflated Inuzuka would get the hint and leave her alone to train. Apparently the boy was thinking too much with his other head to care what she said to him. "Why? You are a Heim, and for the most part NY Heim. Sure, the Uchiha can call you that if he wants to, but I highly doubt it. Come on Hinata, let's go back to my place so we can try to get to know each other better," said Kiba, who after saying that had some perverted thoughts running through his head at what he meant. "Do not be so sure, Kiba. I'm not your wife yet until you become a chunin after all the exams, and to do that you have to make it to the final part. If you are not careful, you and your teammates might get eliminated before then," said Hinata, turning to face him with a strong look in her eyes that told the Inuzuka she was not shy or afraid of him. They were strong eyes. Determined eyes. For one, Kiba hated those eyes on her, meaning she was not acting the submissive female in front of the superior alpha male that he clearly, at least he thought, was. The Inuzuka was not about to have this girl, his girl, and soon to be a woman, gain a backbone before they became officially man and wife. Well, man and wife and man, but enough about the technicalities. "Listen, Hinata, I don't care what you think at this moment, all I know is you are coming back home with me whether you like it or not," said Kiba, becoming more feral while his fingers became sharper like claws and he bared his teeth like a dog, showing they were sharper too. "I choose not, Kiba," said Hinata, facing her opponent in the traditional gentle fist style with her Byakugan activated, vowing she would not be touched by Uchiha Sasuke or this runt of an Inuzuka that stood before her. "Big mistake, Hinata. Once I beat you into submission, I take you right here and now as my prized Hyuga bitch," said Kiba, leering at her, know just what position he wanted her in that would make it all the more fitting. "Such words coming from this fool will only make him more foolish," said a shadowy figure that came up from behind Kiba, who knocked the Inuzuka out with a solid fist to the back of the kid's head. "Han-Naya-san," said Hinata, surprised that the loyal ninja of her Kenpachi-kun was here in the village, where if caught would be tortured and interrogated without mercy to know what secrets her love held within his village. even if they didn't know he was the Shikage of that village. I apologize, Hinata-sama, but considering you were exhausted from training already and he was at full strength, I felt it was my duty to you as well as Shikage-sama to stop him. Forgive me if I have offended you, said Hanaya, bowing his head out of respect for the young woman before him. It's all right, Hanaya-san. You better go before someone notices you are here and alerts the others of your presence, said Hinata, looking around for any threat to her protector. I will take my leave then, but I won't travel far, said Hanaya, disappearing from her sight like a phantom or a demon depending on your perspective. Hinata decided to leave as well, but not before giving the Inuzuka boy a swift kick to his temple for making unwanted advances on her. Akatsuki main base 4 days later. Explosions were heard everywhere through the base, with the alarms going off in every part of the secret mountain structure. At the moment, Itachi, Tobi, Pain, and Konan were running for their lives as Setsu, Sasori, and Deidara stayed behind to fight in order to give them a chance to escape the surprise attack. Judging by the screams that now echoed within the complex, the 3 Akatsuki members were now dead in a brutal fashion. How did they find our base, Pain-sama? Said Konan, looking at the leader of Akatsuki for answers, only to find the man had absolutely none to offer. I don't know, Konan, but for now we need to escape to someplace not even the Kyuubi brat can find us, said Pain, making a right with the others following his every step. Roar Zabimaru! Said a voice as a long whip-like blade attacked out of nowhere, nearly taking Itachi and Konan's heads clean of their shoulders, while Tobi was hit slightly on his right side. What the hell? Said Konan, never seeing anything like that before, while Tobi and Itachi pulled out their own swords to fight against their foes. What makes you think I'm letting fools like you go anywhere? Said Kenpachi, smiling as he appeared before them in the darkness with Sojiro and Renji beside him. So the Kyuubi brat decides to grace us with his presence. What an honor you must feel to willingly offer yourself over to the Akatsuki like this, said Pain, trying to regain his lost control of the situation. Like I would give such power to fools like you. Tell me, Pain, was it? How does it feel to be the leader of Akatsuki, but still take orders from someone like Uchiha Madara? Said Kenpachi, gaining shocked looks from Konan and Itachi, who looks at Tobi wondering if what the demon vessel said was true. Pain-sama, I don't understand? Said Konan before looking at the pronounced Uchiha Madara, who after a few seconds let out a dark laugh. So you figured it out, have you? Tell me, how is Zangetsu these days? I hope he isn't too mad at me for teaching my grandson that Sharingan-enhanced genjutsu that made him go berserk, said Uchiha Madara, now standing in a more commanding posture with his power increasing greatly as he did. Look behind you and find out, said Kenpachi, pointing behind the group for them to see Zangetsu with Saito and Kimimaro now beside him, covered heavily in the blood of the 3 deceased Akatsuki members. You really think that I would let you and your bastard Uchiha children get away from my judgment, Madara? After the stunts you pulled during your life, I should have used my power to annihilate you. To think you were once a Hyuga of the branch family under the cruel rule of the main house, begging them to stop using the caged bird seal on you. I can still remember that day you begged me to free you from your prison, how you simply groveled before me, crying on your knees, and your pale Hyuga eyes overflowing with tears. Do you remember that day, Uchiha? Said Zangetsu, knowing that was the worst day of Madara's life outside of Konoha. I remember that day all too well, demon. For being the only one to know, that was my one weakest moment in life, and as an Uchiha I will regain my lost honor by removing you from this world. Burn through creation, Makoto Shishio, said Uchiha Madara, as he transformed his blade through a cyclone of fire into a sword with a saw-like tip at the end. So you learned how to do that too? Fine. I'm going to enjoy killing you for taking away my family, said Kenpachi, charging towards Madara with their swords clashing together, causing the complex itself to quake around them. Such things like family bore me, only power can give me what I want. I only started my clan to show the Hyugas that they were not as strong as they make others believe, said Madara, unleashing his sword's explosive fire upon the growing boy who looked more like a young man than child. As the two exchanged blows, Saito slipped into his deadly Gatatsu stance and aimed for Pain, so Sojiro and Zangetsu attacked Konan, and Kimimaro and Renji went straight for Itachi. Is that all you got, you poor excuse for an Uchiha? Said Kenpachi, pushing Madara back against a nearby wall, ignoring the burning skin from Madara's sword. You wish it would stay easy, you weakling. The secret of the 3 swords art, sword art number 1, Hamura Dama, said Madara, dragging his sword along the ground, igniting the fire his sword created and sent it towards Kenpachi, who knocked it away. I've felt fire jutsu stronger than that. Don't tell me in your old age you've gotten soft, Madara, said Kenpachi, charging again, once more attacking mercilessly at his opponent, and enjoying the look of frustration on the old Uchiha's face. Itachi was holding his own for the most part against Renji and Kimimaro with the help of his Sharingan eyes and the fact the two were both in front of him. However, that all had become irrelevant as Kimimaro, who originally went long-range offensive, soon changed tactics and, like Renji, moved into close-range combat. Kimimaro now viciously attacked offensively with two bone picks, as the albino liked to call them, since they were like ice picks only made of bone. Kimimaro knew quite the amount of knowledge involving the Sharingan due to the late Sannin. He once worked for Gohan and on about it like it was the key to immortality. What the eyes could do, what they saw before it happened, and the potential to do just about anything he desired if he got a hold of it. On and on Kimimaro had drowned himself in the information, all the while secretly wanting to throw that information out from his head via his mouth. Now he was using the said information against Uchiha Itachi no less, who despite being assaulted in a 2-on-1 fight still held his own, though whether it was skill or just plain luck the albino was not sure. Pain and Konan were not doing so well either, as the corridor, though wide enough to fit all the combatants, was not a spot meant for fight. There was little room to maneuver, and no one wanted to be caught in the crossfire of another person's fight to the death. Mostly due to the fact that the death brought upon such interference, whether voluntary or not, resulted there being a pretty good chance to death becoming your own. For Pain, this warrior in front of him, whose facial structure reminded him of a hungry wolf who is looking at a rabbit, found it hard to avoid the man's strange kenjutsu and taijutsu combo. The man faced various combos that became near misses that if hit would have been lethal wounds to say the very least, and the man did not want to do anybody's work on himself anytime soon. Using several earth jutsus to delay the warrior's wolfish advancement, only for the man to leap off the ground to the ceiling and down at him. Gatatsu style, zero gravity stance, said Saito, taking Pain by surprise and overcoming the spikes and ruptured earth around him before launching himself at the leader of Akatsuki. The receiver of the attack barely had time to react and was wounded in Pain's lower left side as the sword went into his ribs, a knee to his upper right, and a solid punch to his jawline, breaking it in 2 places. Saito twisted his sword and slashed horizontally, making the damage become several times worse than it originally was. For Konan it was even worse, as she was dealing with 2 people like Itachi, though the only difference was she was facing a high-speed kenjutsu warrior and the strongest of all the demon lords. She tried using her paper-like attacks on them, but Sojiro was too fast to hit, and the demon just incinerated her deadly paper attacks upon contact with him. Before she could call up another attack, Sojiro was behind her, Zangetsu was in front of her, and before she knew it she felt a hand from the demon lord himself entering her chest cavity. As Zangetsu slowly squeezed her heart, Konan slowly felt her internal organs now slowly being melted away, while Sojiro, who she could see was going into his Batajutsu stance before severing her head in one swift movement. It was simple to say she received a more merciful death than the others. Itachi was not as fortunate, as he could no longer hold off his 2 attackers after a major miscalculation on his part, lose his right arm at the hands of Renji and his Zabumaru. After that, Kimimaro pinned his bone picks into both the Uchiha's shoulders before making a 3rd bone pick and jamming it into Itachi's left hand. All Itachi could do was scream in pain. Konoha at the moment. Sasuke felt something spark in the back of his mind, as if a feeling of something important had just been taken away from him, but had no idea what. "Hey Sasuke-kun, do you want to practice on our teamwork?" said Sakura, trying to get in her Sasuke-kun to warm up to her in hopes she could be Uchiha wife number 2. "No, Sakura, now leave me alone," said Sasuke, as he headed out to find Kakashi to train him in something new that would help prepare him for the Chunin exams. Akatsuki main base. Konan had fallen, Pain was slowly falling, and Itachi was alive, but now out of the fight, leaving Uchiha Madara against one angry Uzumaki Kenpachi. Why was Kenpachi angry? Well, you would be angry too, if the person responsible for having Zangetsu attack Konoha in a fox-like state made you lose one, if not possibly both, your parents, and then be hated by nearly every single villager from that village. Deciding that sword play was not the best option at the moment, Uchiha Madara back flipped away from Fire style, Raging Fire's Jutsu, said Uchiha Madara, going through 20 hand signs before taking big breath, and unleashed a large stream of fire at Kenpachi before using his sword to create another Hamura dance, sending a second wave. Earth style, Earth Shield Jutsu, said Kenpachi, slamming his left hand down, creating a shield made from the stone beneath him, protecting him from both flames. Still, the intensity of both attacks eventually destroyed the shield and hit Kenpachi, giving him a few more burns to add to his body despite his chakra shield surrounding his skin. He had only started mastering it about 6 months prior, but was getting the handle on it, making it damn near impenetrable. The only thing that could hurt him was someone or something of equal or stronger force, and from what Zangetsu told him early on, such people and things were quite rare these days. Die and let me feed. Secret of the Three Swords Art, Sword Art number 3, Kaguzuchi, yelled Madara, losing his patience with the demon vessel, as it was his turn to go on the offensive, creating a cyclone of fire around his sword before swinging his blade at his enemy. I have a much better idea, Uchiha team. Why don't I just send you straight back to hell? Pierce through the darkness, Zaraki Kenpachi, said Kenpachi, releasing more chakra from his body, changing his sword, and charged at Madara with a psychotic look in his one-seeable eye. The two clashed with all the power they could muster into their attack, creating a very powerful explosion that shook everything in the Akatsuki base. When the smoke cleared, Kenpachi had a nasty burning cut going diagonally right downward to his kidney region. As for Uchiha Madara, his body was mangled nearly beyond repair, as the power behind the explosion seemed to have done a great deal of damage to Madara's apparently already fragile body. The man had clearly used some version of the immortality jutsu that the late Orochimaru used, and Kenpachi was beginning to suspect how the snake Sannin achieved and make the jutsu. The traitorous Sannin had always been working on twisted experiments to achieve a way to become immortal before and after he left Konoha. Kenpachi then remembered what Sasuke had told him about the Valley of the End being the battlefield for Madara and the Shodaime Hokage. Since Madara had been alive since the days of the Shodaime Hokage, it was clear that Madara was the original founder of the immortality jutsu. However, it was clear that Orochimaru's version and Madara's version were different due to the now officially dead Uchiha was still in the body he first stole. Meaning that whatever version that Orochimaru found was the incomplete version Madara started ages ago, and giving it his own variation from what was given in the old Uchiha's notes. Well, now that's over, how do we deal with this guy? Said Rinji, pointing to Itachi, who had his scratched-up headband covering his eyes to prevent him from using his Sharingan on anyone. He stays alive for now, since I intend for him to die in the leaf in a way that will drive Uchiha Sasuke nuts, and fill him with rage knowing he couldn't avenge his clan. Before we do that though, I need you Kimimaro to find Uchiha Madara's personal journals he has stashed somewhere in his quarters. From what Zangetsu told me of him, he always had one for each important moment in his life. I want to know what body he used to stay alive all this time, said Kenpachi before raising his sword above him and brining it down on Madara's sword, destroying it. Kenpachi-sama, your sword is different, said Rinji, looking at the man's sword, never seeing the transformed state, with one side being flat and the other side jagged with a yellow corn crop like hilt. Not really, but then again, you've never seen this form of it before, have you? Remember the swords we carry and give names to reflect a part of who we are. Yours show you can strike hard and fast at any enemy no matter the range, Rinji. While mine shows that I can be nice and then I can be nasty when the battle suits me, though I think I went just a little overboard, said Kenpachi, laughing his head off, receiving a bug-eyed look from Rinji at his Kage, simply calling what he did little. We should take the dead and have an auction among the daimyos on who will pay the most for the most infamous of missing ninja, said Saito, thinking in terms of the money being able to help the village and the shikage that he now served. Good idea, Saito-san, said Sojiro, giving his fake smile for all to see, though having been constantly smiling for so long that even Kenpachi wondered when the last time the boy showed any emotion at all. Like Kenpachi when he still had the name Naruto, Sojiro's previous home life was not fun. Like the shikage put on a mask to hide the pain. The only problem was Sojiro didn't know how to take off the mask and show emotion other than smiling constantly at people. If one didn't understand the significance of the young man's smile, or anything else about him for that matter, one would think Sita Sojiro was the happiest person in the world. Konoha 2 weeks later. Rumors of Akatsuki's death destruction hit harder than Tsunade does Jiraiya when he's caught peeping on women in the hot springs. There was talk that the very daimyos of the elemental countries themselves were invited to a private viewing of the deceased foes in question, with the exception of Uchiha Itachi, though the shikage swore upon his title the man was indeed dead. Naturally, when word got out about Itachi's supposed demise along with his Akatsuki comrades, Sasuke was livid with rage, ready to kill anything in his path. The only one able to calm Sasuke down was Kakashi, who had to calm the boy down when the Uchiha had simply barged into the meeting room with the council were discussing things. The young prodigy went straight up to Danzo demanding he order the Hokage to make him go on an assassination mission to kill the one who killed Itachi. While Danzo was all for it, the only problem was no one in the Shinigami village had taken credit for killing Itachi yet, out of the possibility that Sasuke would want to do something so drastic. Kakashi then told Sasuke that it would be total suicide for the boy to go into Shikage and face Itachi's killer alone, since no one who wasn't loyal to the Kage there lived. That and the fact that Sasuke was now officially in the literal as well as figurative sense the last Uchiha, it was now even more important than ever the boy revive his clan to its former greatness. At this, Uchiha Sasuke did fully calm down and thought about his supposed brides-to-be, since Kakashi finally, after much talk with the Haruna woman, got her daughter into an arranged marriage with Sasuke. He had the Hyuga girl that seemed to be in love with Naruto, and of course Sakura. The pink-haired girl meant little to him since she was weak and would only use her for 1 or 2 children before having her removed from the clan altogether. However, the Hyuga girl Hinata was a different prize in herself, since she was in love with that loser, who brought him back, and now she was his whether she liked it or not. At this, Uchiha Sasuke couldn't help but smile, knowing he had one of Naruto's precious people in his unmerciful clutches, and before her life was over the last Uchiha intended to squeeze every last bit of life out of it to ensure the revival of his clan. That girl loves the loser, but in the end I'll make sure she gives birth to Uchiha children, not Uzumaki, thought Sasuke, grinning evilly, knowing that the girl was his and not Naruto's. Hyuga compound at the moment. Hinata was once more studying from the many scrolls in her room, only this time she was learning more and more in the medical field this time. She knew as well as Tsunade did when fighting Kabuto that anyone who could heal using this type of knowledge could also kill with it with deadly precision. When the Chunin exams came, and should she face her so-called husbands-to-be, she intended to make sure they never left the arena the same again, or at all for that matter. There was a knock at the door, and her father walked in, giving a look of pride at his once shy daughter working hard at her studies for the upcoming exam. He had several things to tell Hinata, with one that was brought to his attention in secret by a frozen dragon-type skull of a mask-wearing ninja, who had handed it to him to tell Hinata. When Hayashi had learned the news, he was rather upset, knowing that such events would hurt his daughter, and he had hated himself for it ever since he started it. Hinata, I have some information I need to tell you, said Hayashi, closing the sliding door behind him. He approached his daughter and sat on her bed so he wouldn't have to talk louder than he had to. What kind of news, father? Have they completed that new seal for me to have on before my wedding? Said Hinata calmly, making Hayashi flinch just thinking about that damned seal, knowing it would ruin her life the instant it was placed on her. No, Hinata. It's about your mother and Naruto. Or should I say Kenpachi? Said Hayashi, knowing that her gasp of shock and worry confirmed what he knew of Hinata's secret contact with the rogue warrior. How did you know? Said Hinata, knowing that she had placed the letters in her diary, and placed a blood seal over it so only she could open the tiny book when she so desired. A ninja from the Shikage told me. He also told me just who the Shikage is, as well as some other information that concerns you. However, before I can further go into that, I have something I need to give you that belonged to your mother that I know she would have wanted you to have, said Hayashi, taking out a large weapon scroll and handing it to Hinata, who took it with slightly shaky hands. After opening it, Hinata once more gasped at the weapon before her. That was her mother's own sword that seemed to be, for the lack of a better word, beautiful. Where was it all this time? Said Hinata, stuttering slightly at the sword before her. The Hyuga elders had it sealed away shortly after your mother died, giving birth to Hanabi, wanting to have the last of power die with her or sealed away. I only found this when, strangely enough, I felt it call to me when I was looking through our vast Hyuga archives. I remember your mother's instructions on this matter were clear when you were born, that you would be the one to receive her sword when you were old enough, said Hayashi, believing his daughter was indeed ready to take up her mother's sword. Thank you, father, I will treasure it always, said Hinata, holding the sword with care out of some strange fear she might destroy it. I know you will. However, now I must come to inform you of some information that I was told to tell you about Kenpachi, said Hayashi, getting Hinata's full and now slightly worried attention. What news? Is Kenpachi-kun okay? Said Hinata, who after realizing the suffix she used blushed a horrible shade of red. He is okay, but what I am told concerns me. As I assume you already know, the Shikage is really Uzumaki Kenpachi. Not long ago, soon as Kazekage Sabaku no Gaara came to visit Kenpachi to discuss an alliance with him to defeat their enemies. Unfortunately, an arranged marriage was involved concerning Gaara's sister Sabaku no Temari, said a now saddened Hayashi. An arranged marriage? Said Hinata, as already her fears on who Temari was marrying came into her mind. Yes. Gaara wanted Temari to marry Kenpachi because he trusts no other person with his sister's happiness, and it also seems that Temari herself has become quite attached to the Shikage ever since defeating the Kazekage in combat. Kenpachi reluctantly agreed, said Hayashi, seeing Hinata's eyes tear up at her dreams of being with her love were now being destroyed outside the village as well as inside. And no, yelled Hinata, hugging her father, crying into his chest as he patted her shoulder for a good 5 minutes. Hinata, there is more, said Hayashi, looking at his daughter whose eyes had become so bloodshot so quickly from such news. More? Said Hinata, wondering if she could take any more bad news today. Yes, but it's actually good news this time. You see, while Kenpachi, as the Shikage stated he would marry Temari, he would only do so if he married one other person beforehand to help rebuild his father's clan under his mother's name, said Hayashi, who for a brief moment thought he saw a flare of hope in his daughter's eyes. Who? Said Hinata, wondering just who this girl was. You, Hinata. Kenpachi has always loved you and told Gaara he would marry Temari on the condition that he married you first, and were to be the first to sire his children, said Hayashi, seeing Hinata's mix of joy and disbelief. But father, I don't understand. Who was Kenpachi-kun's father? Said Hinata, only to blush again at speaking the suffix that she placed on her love's name. His father, I sorry to say, was none other than Minato Namikaze, who was also known to many others as the Yondaime, and Konoha's Yellow Flash, said Hayashi, earning another gasp from Hinata, knowing the man was indeed legendary in his own right. The Yondaime? Said Hinata in disbelief, though when she saw the picture of him and compared it to Kenpachi when he was still Naruto, it didn't surprise her that they looked so very much alike. Yes. Unfortunately, even such a title as the son of the Yondaime does not grant you the immunity it should from the hostility of your own village. Minato was the last of his clan at the time that were known to have amazing bloodline that gave them unnatural stamina and endurance. It was how he was able to create the Flying Thunder God technique, and withstand the heavy chakra drainage and physical strain that would have killed anyone else, said Hayashi, having seen that power in action, and how the elders had continuously tried to get Minato to marry into the Hyuga clan so they could add to give them power. But why put the revival of his clan under his mother's name, and not his father's? Said Hinata, not understanding her love's reason for doing such a thing. I believe that Kenpachi despises his father, and has denounced his father's last name to stick with the one he has known all his life. Regardless, should there be a time when you are able to go with him to Shinigami village to be with him and marry, I won't stop you, Hinata, said Hayashi, smiling a little at seeing the shock in his daughter's face turn into a sparkle of happiness he had not seen since his late wife told him she was pregnant. Hayashi remembered because right after she told him, he passed out from shock for 3 full hours. Hinata, not knowing what to say, once more grabbed her father into a tight hug, not letting go while crying once more, only this time they were tears of joy. Sure, she would have to share her love with another woman, but it wasn't some Kenpachi fangirl skank like what Sakura or any of the other Sasuke fangirls was like that hoard over the Uchiha, but it was the one person other than her that understood the pain of Kenpachi. Someone who could be trusted not to hate him for who he was, but love him for who he is and never betray him for anyone. Whether Temari knew it or not, Hinata approved of the arranged marriage. It didn't take long for the realization of the rest of her father's statement, that she would be the first to marry Kenpachi and be the first to give birth to his children. Hayashi could only sigh at his daughter, realizing that she had fainted, now sported a blush-covered face, and had steam coming out of her ears with a small trickle of blood from her nose. Just as with her mother, Hinata was also secretly a pervert for the man she loved, though it was a rare, shy, perverted form that rarely appears once every few generations, but at the same time was also the most potent. The female spirit that was residing in her sword that now rested beside the young Hyuga girl could only sigh, knowing it was going to be a long while before the girl awoke from her newly formed fantasies. So much like your mother, thought Unohana Retsu, patting the young girl's head as she had remembered what the girl's mother was like when it came to Hayashi. Hayashi couldn't move for a week after their honeymoon. The said Hyuga Hayashi shut the door behind him, wishing that he could do more for his daughter and the clan itself as whole, knowing how upset the branch families were with the main. The man could only assume that were it not for the caged bird seal right now, each and every main family member with the possible exception of Hanabi and Hinata would be killed right now. Niji understood that Hayashi had the ground take right out from under him and still held a great deal of respect for his uncle in that regard in trying to heal what wounds he could. With the elders wielding a great deal of power and influence now, it was becoming more difficult than ever to fix the problems that had been made years past, long before the clan head had been born. Now the Chunin exams were approaching, and soon shinobi from various places would gather here in this very place to compete for various feudal lords and prospective clients for future missions. Normally they would come to see the Leaf show off its best ninjas and its brightest prodigies they had ever produced into their shinobi ranks. Now they were watching to witness who would be responsible for knocking the village hidden in the leaves of its feet and into the proverbial gutter. As if that didn't happen already. Shinigami no Sato 2 weeks before the Chunin exams. "Is everything ready?" said Kenpachi, looking at Kimimaro, who kneeled before him once more, wore his black robes with fox mask skull on his face. "Yes, Kenpachi-sama. All of us are ready to depart for Konoha. Even now we have more than enough of a defense from our shinobi numbers to defend the village while we are away," said Kimimaro, knowing that the last thing that Kenpachi wanted was for his still new hidden village to be destroyed while he was away. The Shikage in question now wore large black robes with stripes along the outer edges that were a dark navy blue that would almost blend in with the black without the proper eyesight to spot the difference. Another thing Kimimaro had noticed was that his master had not spiked his hair along with the bells that went with his usual attire. "Good. Hanaya's return from Konoha a few weeks ago confirmed what I have already known from the start," said Kenpachi, grinning an evil grin before putting on his mask that had many tremble at just the sight of him. "And what is that, Kenpachi-sama?" said Kimimaro, wondering what the demon-masked spy had told his master about Konoha. "That it's nothing more than a dying animal that needs to be put out of its misery," said Kenpachi, letting out a laugh as he covered his face and mask entirely with his large black hood. Indeed, Konohagaku no Sato was a dying animal that needed to be put out of its horrible misery, and Uzumaki Kenpachi was the sadistic son of a bitch of a doctor who was going to stab the village with his needle, aka his sword, into its heart and twist the blade of the point home. "Ikako-san and Yumichika are ready as well, sir. They have instructed Yuichiro on what to do when arriving in Konoha and to remain on her best behavior for the plans you have to work," said Kimimaro, knowing that if those three were to take up the part as a genin team they would have to get along and not kill each other. The three would have a better chance in doing the exact opposite if they were not on the same team. "Let's go then, Kimimaro. I want my Shinigami 4 ready for departure with me in the carriage, and the other teams we are sending to go as well. You are going to be the driver of my carriage and will be my official translator for this event, since I will be speaking to you in demon tongue," said Kenpachi, knowing that to further hide his identity until the time came, Zangetsu had taught both him, Kimimaro, and the others among his forces the language, knowing it would confuse the Leaf as to the identity of the Shikage. "Everyone has been informed of this, Shikage-sama, and will not show any potential signs of surprise," said Kimimaro, knowing that he should refer to the man as his title and not name, since if his name were spoken could cause problems. Kimimaro would rather die having spikes pierce every chakra point his body had. Soon at the Chunin exams the Leaf will run red with blood, consumed by flame, and its very ashes thrown into the wind by the power of the village hidden in the Shinigami, said Kenpachi, walking out of the room with Kimimaro walking right behind him. Konoha 1 week to the Chunin exams. Marino Idate had stopped into Konoha to see the Chunin exams as a prior request from his master, an employer that was Uzumaki Kenpachi. The younger of the two Marino family members was assured that given the chance Abiki would be spared the wrath of the Shikage, and even offered to join as part of the interrogation unit. Hell, even Enko could join if she wished to as well, knowing that the village didn't exactly hold her in good regards on account of her past apprenticeship with Orochimaru. But enough about sadistic torture and those skilled in its arts. At the moment, Idate made his way through the streets of the village hidden in the Leaf to scare the holy hell out of the people in this shinobi village. No matter where you go, it was a well-known fact that bars, no matter what the hour, are filled with people were well known to be normally the very best place to get stories spread about someone. Good or bad, any story told spreads like wildfire and grows with each person telling the story that can make a small fist fight turn into the Fourth Shinobi War. What Idate had in mind was to turn a simple story into that of mind-numbing fear that it would eventually become once he left the bar. The place was known as the Leaf's Branch, which was famous for holding many shinobi within its walls for drinks and parties that sprang up depending on the occasion. Right now, though, the bar, while full of shinobis ranging from Chunin to Jounin, and secretly A and B with their masks still on to hide their identities. It was very rare for civilians of any stature to enter the bar unless you were friends or family of shinobi. Ide walked in, ignoring the look some of the people gave him, and noticed that his older brother Ibiki was here with a woman with purple hair. If Ide recalled correctly, was none other than Anko, his right-hand woman in torture and interrogation. Seeing his brother's rarely surprised look that was now on his face meant that Ibiki wasn't expecting to see his younger brother for a long time. "Well, I'll be a damned soul in the ninth circle of hell. My little brother Ide has finally come back home," said Ibiki, as he now rose from his seat, smiling at his younger and still shorter brother, pulling him into a bear of a hug. "Thanks, Ibiki, but I'm not staying here in Leaf after the Chunin exams are over to see what runts you decide to pull a hat trick on this time," said Ide, seeing his older brother flinch, knowing that what happened in that particular exam. "Just that, huh?" said Ibiki, depressed that his brother still held a small bit of resentment towards him for failing his team during the written test. "I'm also here to pass on to you what I know about the Shikage, since I met him in person once," said Ide, saying it loudly enough for everyone to hear and getting the turning of heads that he was looking for. Just as Kenpachi and him had planned for this to go. "Bullshit. Everyone knows that the Shikage kills all that are not part of his village when he's outside of it," said Anko, not believing a word the younger Marino spoke. "Believe what you want, I met the guy even if it was under certain circumstances," said Ide, ordering a drink since his brother would vouch for him. "What kind of circumstances are you talking about?" said Ibiki, curiously giving his baby brother the drink, hoping that if he wouldn't need to drug another should Ide want to try and order another one. By now the whole bar was listening in. "You really want to know?" said Ide before taking a sip of his drink and smiling at the two shinobi in front of him. "Come on, Ibiki, the kid's lying. There is no way in heaven or hell that he met the Shikage and lived to tell about it right here to our faces," said Anko, spitting on the wooden table on Ide's side. This from the same person, who no one believed that Orochimaru was done using as a failed experiment for the cursed seal of heaven? Said Ide, looking at her with resolve many don't show to the snake user. "Why, you little," said Anko, ready to gut the kid then, and there Ibiki's kin be damned. "Anko, calm down. Ide, I want to know about your encounter with him, since not many people can actually describe him without exaggerating about the details," said Ibiki, and hoped that for his brother's sake that he was telling the truth, or else Anko would most likely tear him apart. And that was if she was in a good mood, which she wasn't. "If you insist, bro," said Ide, taking bigger swig of his drink and just letting it sit in his mouth for a moment before swallowing. This should be good, thought Anko, wondering what Ibiki's little brother was going to tell them, and hoped it was half believable, otherwise she was going to do something very unpleasant. "Well, I was in this town not too far in the borders of Rock Country. I think you may even know it, Ibiki. It's a place called Stonehenge. Anyway, it was night time and I was feeling thirsty, so I went to find a place called the Devil's Nest to get a simple drink, nothing serious. Now the place I went to when I entered it was full of real low-live ninja scum that were from IWA, with a few missing ninja from other villages trying to have one day's peace before going on the run again," said Ide, laying out the groundwork of his little story so everyone got a good picture of it in their heads. "Wait, you went to that place? Either you were smoking some opium, or you were taking something else," said Ibiki, having known the said place, and now wondered how in the name of Kami did Ide survive that place. "I figured it's late, I'm thirsty, and that as long as I'm here I might as well have at least something to drink of whatever it is they have in the place. Anyway, before you decided to interrupt me, I was at the point where I got my drink, sat down at a table with my back against the wall, and relaxed drinking. Then about 20 minutes later in walks possibly the biggest guy I have ever seen. I mean, he was big as SHIT, while walking in as if he owned the damned place. Seriously, bro, this guy makes you look like a midget in height by comparison," said Ide, making many people look at Ibiki, picturing him standing tall, and then imagining someone even taller than the scarred man, making some of the weaker ninja in the bar become pale in fear at facing such a foe. "Then what happened?" said Anko, actually liking the story so far. "Well, and he walked calmly, confidently, and commandingly with a grace you find in the most veteran S-class shinobi when they aren't in combat. He was dark too, but not dark tan skin if that's what you thought I meant. No, this guy was different. It was like he was always living in a shadow that always seemed to shield his face in the dimmed light. I mean, just when you thought his face was going to be revealed, it wasn't. It was as if the lights themselves dimmed just for him," said Ide, trying to give everyone a picture of the whole thing. Yeah, because he probably has a face not even his whore of a mother could love, said a random jounin, getting laughs and howls from everyone in the room, which didn't seem to bother Idate from what Ibiki noticed. Believe what you want, but I know what I saw. Anyway, back to the story at hand. So the guy walks up to the bar, sits down, nearly breaking the stool he's on, and orders a soda. I think it was once that has the taste of cherries in them, said Idate, thinking back before nodding his head at what he just said. Cherry-flavored soda? Has sounds kind of weak. Go on, said an A&B wearing a cat mask over his face. Well, at first the guy does nothing except drinking his drink, but then I noticed that he's now leaning over the bar area whispering something to the bartender. Now from where I was I couldn't hear what they were saying, but you could tell the Shikage was serious because whatever he said to the bartender made the guy really upset. The way that the bartender narrowed his eyes when the Shikage whispered to him made me a little uneasy. I could tell because I could see everyone else looking at those two with suspicion along with their curiosity. Especially when the Shikage said something like Nam? No, that's not it. Nami maybe? No, that's not it either. Namikaze? Said Idate, looking at everyone to see their reactions, which made them look at each other with serious faces. What does the Shikage want with the fourth's last name? Thought everyone in the bar. Are you sure he said Namikaze? Said Ibiki, looking at his brother with his piercing gaze to seek the truth from him. Yep, that's what it was. Namikaze, said Idate, saying the name loudly for everyone to hear. Well, what happened after that? Said Anko, knowing a good bloodbath was finally about to happen from where she pictured this story going. Well, whatever else was said really upset the bartender, and some of those ninja I mentioned to you in the beginning? They got pissed too. They all started pulling out their swords, their kunais, and stuff, wanting to start some shit with this giant now standing with his back to them. So the Shikage, he bolts right off the bar stool faster than I could see. He grabs a weapons summoning scroll, and opens it, creating a large cloud of smoke blocking everyone's eyesight. Now I don't know what he does with that huge summoning scroll, but he's up in less than a second, and he's wielding the most war-torn sword I have ever fucking seen. Said Idate, yelling the last part, making a few people around him jump slightly at the volume of his voice. And? Said one person that wore a Chunin vest, leaning in to hear more. And that just the beginning, said Idate, rubbing his eyes, making it look like it was a painful memory he didn't like to remember. So what happened? You didn't do anything or jump in? Said an A&B, really getting into the whole story now, and nearly on the edge of her seat. With what little ninja training I had? I was frozen stiff at the sight. All I could do watch this thing tear the place apart. I mean, it was amazing. Cutthroat scumbags were all coming out of the woodwork, dying much-deserved deaths. It was judgment night in that place, said Idate, letting us sigh before taking another drink, only to stop for a second to look as if he was deep in thought. So anyway, he grabs one of these guys, though he's really the only guy still breathing after that slaughter. The Shikage notices he has a leaf headband on with a mark over it that tells him he was once from here in Konoha. The Shikage starts getting information out of him, and I could just tell by the whispering and all, this guy was giving up all the goods. I mean, he was spilling his guts, confessing the world for all in the room to hear. This guy told the Shikage everything he knew, said Idate, taking another drink from his cup. Everything, said a random A&B Root member, looking at another one of his fellow Root members. What's wrong? Said Ibiki, frowning, seeing his little brother's faraway look. Can I get a cleaner mug? This one's dirty, said Idate, making everyone face fault at the comment, and the boy in question laughed sheepishly. Hey, screw you, kid, that's the cleanest mug I've got, said the bartender with several red ticks on the side of his head, while Idate just shrugs and decides to continue. Without warning, hint, or preview, the stranger whips around and sees me, said Idate, now finding he had everyone's full attention back on him once more. You saw his face, said Ibiki, showing a look of surprise that rarely ever appeared on that scarred form of his anymore. His face? And no, I saw his eyes. They were lifeless eyes. Soulless eyes. The devil's eyes, said Idate, knowing that Kenpachi normally fought with an eye patch and mask on. Several people shivered while one person unknowingly pissed himself silly. And he didn't do anything to you? Said a jounin, looking at Idate, wondering what made the kid worthy of being sparred in this massacre. Not really, since he turned his attention to the guy on the floor trying to reach a nearby sword. The Shikage killed him, walked over to the bartender, paid, and left, said Idate, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. So the bartender lived, said the bartender not too far away from the group, laughing. Huh, said Irate, looking at the guy who was currently balding with his growing age. The bartender never gets killed, said the bartender, laughing even more. You would think that. Butaz the stranger near the door. The bartender tried a sneak attack Sono Man. The bartender got it worse than anybody in that whole damn room, said Irate, finishing his drink and wiping his mouth clean. Everyone was pale in their face as Orochimaru was naturally white, knowing whoever this guy was, he was one mean son of a bitch. I'll get you another drink on me if you can tell us what his face looked like, said an Anbu Root shinobi, holding out a fresh drink for the man to have. Thanks, pal, but no thanks. I'm getting out of here into a safe place here in Konoha. I can use our old house, right, bro? Said Idate, getting a nod from Ibiki, who had tried to get more info later. Why leaving here so soon? Said Anko, raising an eyebrow at the beau's sudden urge to leave the bar and head back to the old Marino household. Don't you guys know anything? The Shikage is sending his best and brightest here for the Chunin exams, and he's coming here with them to see them perform personally, said Idate, leaving in a hurry while many of the people in the bar were glued to their seats in shock, with some having their drinks spilled over, some had the strength to poof out of the place to try and confirm this news, and several other people too weak to handle such news simply passed out. Within the next week the gates of hell would open and the Chunin exams would start. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun as I did putting this epic what if together. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single twist in the story. Drop your thoughts, theories, or even wild ideas in the comments. I read every single one. And hey, if you're craving more awesome Naruto content, go check out the other videos on the channel. I've got plenty of heat waiting for you. Until next time, stay sharp, stay awesome, and remember, even a shadow clone needs love. Peace out.